Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Couple of Nukes. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Whiskey, but this is not an as always episode. This is my very first international meeting in person. I've been on podcasts in Africa, Jamaica. I've interviewed people from Ireland and Italy, but this is the first time in person in this very cramped hotel room in Japan. We are meeting to record, and I'm super excited about it. This is one of the things I was hoping to do while in Japan is get to meet some people, and this was totally got organized, or some might say a coincidence, that today's guest reached out to me. Happy to say I'm an author in Japan. No relation, did not know I was in Japan. And I was like, oh my goodness, I just landed here like a week ago. We got to meet up. And so here we are. Today we're going to talk about so many different topics, all interconnected. And a quote I saw once that I really liked, it said, "It is hard to find healing when your inner child wants to be loved and safe and needs healing, but your teenage self is in rebellion and angry and wants revenge, and the current you just wants peace." And we're going to get into some of those topics today, specifically the inner child, and I'm excited for this conversation. And so, mysterious reveal, I'm just going to pass it over to you to introduce yourself, a brief overview of who you are before we get into the nitty-gritty details. Like I said, we've got a lot to cover, and you can attest to our listeners, it's a sauna in here, so we might have to take a break halfway through and come back. But thank you so much for meeting me in person, for commuting over here and making this journey. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is David Deane Haskell. Thank you for having me. It is an incredible situation. I've been doing podcasts for like 3 months or so, pretty consistently. I'm talking about my books, my fiction and my nonfiction books, but I've never done in person because I live in Japan. And it's like,
Right.
like somebody's in New York or they're in Europe or whatever. And I did reach out to you and I didn't know you were in Japan and you weren't that close, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, you want to get together and, oh, I'm going to be on your side of town doing a marathon thing. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that I have like the chance to do something in person. So here we
Right.
are in person. It's great. And yeah, it is a tiny, if you come to Japan, you'll know. This is one of the smallest ones I've ever seen, which is
But not
awesome.
the smallest.
Not the one of the
Not
smallest
the
I've ever seen.
smallest.
But roll with it. It's an opportunity to do a live thing, and that's really awesome. So thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
It's been 3 years of podcasting for me, and this is probably only my fourth in person. And it's always been a weird scenario. Like, first time it was in person, winter time. We went to go to this hotel lobby. They were doing construction. We had to sit outside with this right on a river. The wind just channeling down, cold. My fingers turned blue during the interview. We were out there. And then second time was this old historical building, and it was not studio quality, and the lighting. Don't even get me started about the lighting. And then I guess that's it, really. I haven't done many
And now this
in-person
one.
interviews. Yeah, this
Right.
one, first
Yep.
international one.
Mhm.
I recently did a special Japan to Jamaica. We interviewed from Japan to Jamaica, which you're talking about podcasting with a lot of East Coasters, so you're well
Mhm.
aware of the time difference being kind of a pain sometimes. I've
Yeah.
been waking up at midnight, 1 a.m., and especially for the podcast in Africa and India, it's even worse trying to coordinate that than the East Coast. And then West Coast, they just say, listen, when you get back from Japan, I'll meet you because they're all the way behind us,
Oh man. Well, yeah, I've never tried India or Africa. I've done Europe kind of works, except that when I tell all my friends about it, it's 3 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast or whatever. But it works here and it works there. And the West Coast, yeah, I think their kind of evening is coming into our morning. So I've been able to do that. But yeah, it's a challenge.
Mhm.
It's a lot easier to do in person. I just took a train. It was
Right,
30 minutes. Boom, I'm here. I love it.
right,
Yeah.
right. Like you said, 3 months, brand new basically to the world of podcasting. So, what is kind of the mission with that?
Right. I'm an author. I've written 6 books, 5 sci-fi books, and then one inner child healing book, which is what we
Right.
were talking about at the intro. And I published that book a little more than a year ago and was sort of trying to get the word out, but I really didn't want to do my own videos. I didn't want to be the guy, walk and talk and all that kind of stuff, try
Right,
to come
right.
off like a guru or anything like that. And I'm like, well, I'm a writer, you know, just read my book, right? But it doesn't work like that. And it's like you got to get out there, you got to get your voice out there, you got to, people have to see who you are and meet you and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't want to do it myself, and I was
Mm,
trying to figure out what worked with my integrity. because a lot of
Right.
that feels manipulative or feels like just,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know, salesy or whatever. And I was like, well, I can have conversations. I don't want to have my own podcast
Mm.
because that's commitment that I'm not willing to do. I would rather just go to other podcasts and meet
Right.
people, connect that way, and also form relationships because I got 2 more books coming out. So I'm not looking for like a one-time thing. I'm looking to like meet people that I'm connected with and have conversations
Right.
going forward. So right now it's sort of like that period of, I think I've probably at this point probably recorded like 20, and I think 6 or 8 of them are already out, and
Okay.
it's just like, and I get a secret to
Learning the
Holly.
flow of it
Yeah,
and all
well, I
that.
mean, yeah, sure, absolutely, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it doesn't go well with the technical difficulties.
Right,
The
right,
thing where the live thing, the face-to-face thing is way better.
right.
So
Now, I got to read part of your book. I got through 38% of it because I didn't get a copy until like yesterday, basically, and it's been a crazy time, but I loved what I read so far.
okay,
I would liken it to, and not to compare any books or contrast any books, but it reminded me of one of my favorite books, which is Slaughterhouse-Five. Now, Slaughterhouse-Five, if any of y'all have not read it, it's a very famous classic book. Most high schools teach it, not because of the content itself, but the style.
mm-hmm.
So, for those who aren't familiar with Slaughterhouse-Five, the chronological order is seemingly random. You jump between the past, the present, and the future because the alien species sees all the time at once in that novel. And so the main character gets kind of all jumbled up and stuff. And so, are you familiar with that book at all?
Yes,
Right. Now, with you, essentially what I've picked up so far, like I said, I haven't finished it, but you're going to the personifications of your inner children, so to speak, different
mm-hmm,
ones,
mm-hmm,
different ages. And as I was reading, you were walking us through, not, I wouldn't even say confronting them, but having a conversation with them
mm-hmm,
and trying to explore and understand what they need, what they want, and ultimately how that will fulfill you.
mm-hmm,
You referenced it as shadow work. I read that a couple of
mm-hmm.
times, and so in that style, I think it's really interesting that instead of just saying because of this or that, you made it into a personification, like a mission of I have to go meet all these versions of myself and talk with them. So is that exactly kind of a direct reflection of the process you went through? Like how would you talk about, or rather, I think we should back up. What brought you to the realization like, hey, I need to heal my inner children, that the inner child, all these different wounds I have. How did you even get to that realization?
Okay. Wow, there's a lot there. And it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
really awesome, first of all, because I do love Kurt Vonnegut. In fact, and I don't know if you got to any chapters with my dad in the book. I think you probably did, right?
Mm.
He passed away last year. So there was a very
Oh,
complicated relationship there.
yeah.
I did talk to him 2 days before he died. We had
Mm.
repaired a lot of the stuff, but and I had to give him a copy of Wounded Angels before I published it because he's so key in the book. And
Right.
kind of not ask his permission. Well, I did kind of ask his permission, like, yeah, I'm going to publish this thing. And he didn't read it before I published. He said, go ahead and publish. You can say whatever you want and I'll read it. But then he read it and it did hurt him
Mm.
because I was being very honest about, growing
Right.
up with an alcoholic dad
Right.
and the pain and the trauma. So anyway, he and I went to see Kurt Vonnegut speak at my university.
Wow.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
a
wow.
huge Kurt Vonnegut fan. He gave me not Slaughterhouse-Five, but some of the one with Grand Falloon. I don't remember the title right this minute.
I only know that's the
You only
only
know
Kurt Von. Yeah, I
Slaughterhouse-Five,
think that's
right?
the
Yeah,
only one
yeah.
I've read.
But well, thank you for the compliment. I mean, to be
Yeah.
compared to a great writer in any way is awesome.
Right.
I didn't write it that way on purpose, but
Mm.
the writing came out of the work. So the work started first. So I went through a lot of trauma when I was a kid, including my mother passing away,
Mhm.
which affected me deeply. And I was really had difficulty forming relationships. And I was really dark in the dark space as a kid, even. Then it got worse in my 20s, 30s, 40s, got into addiction, just kind of like, I mean, life was dark. So finally I had to either die or get better. That's how it goes. So
Right.
first I addressed the substance addictions. This was in 2018. And I'd already started writing fiction, but I'd never thought about writing nonfiction. And then after that, addressing codependence, which was just as much an addiction
Mm.
for me as drugs or alcohol ever were, or
Right.
even
Right.
more. That led to inner child work. Because if you look at the book Codependence Anonymous, unlike AA, and I'm not going to talk about 12-step much, but unlike AA, Codependence Anonymous talks about shame,
Mm.
talks about inner child, talks about resolving the, childhood stuff, and shame being at the root of all addictions, which for me was very true. So I started doing the inner child work, and that was in 2021. And I did it for like a few years, and it had nothing to do with writing. It was just healing work that I was doing, like connecting with these parts of me that were frozen in traumatic moments.
Right.
I was trying to learn what they wanted to teach me, as you mentioned, like connecting. Not confronting, but connecting. And they're very wise. My inner child, I think everybody's inner child is very wise. It's not like,
Right.
I'm going to parent you. It's not like that. It's more like, what do you need? What do I need to know
Right.
about what happened and the truth behind it, my truth, my integrity,
Mm.
all that stuff. And then, anyway, during that time, I had a writer's block. I wasn't writing at all. And then that broke in 2024, a couple of years ago. Started writing the sci-fi again, and all of a sudden the inner child stuff started writing itself every day. I didn't want to write it. I was like,
Mm.
I don't want to be a nonfiction. Well, I don't want to be a self-help guy, guru, whatever.
Right.
Screw
Right.
that. That's not me. This is my journey. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not any of that. I don't even want to be. But it wrote itself. It's like it took about 6 weeks.
Right.
Every day I was doing the work and writing the work at the same time, voice to text. So it was like as it was. And so that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
said, jumping around. A lot of that's I was
Yeah.
just vocalizing what was happening. And it was written really quick, but then it took me 6 months to publish it because the inner child was like, "You kidding? You want to put this out in the
Right.
world and like be vulnerable?"
And what you were talking about is something I've gone through as an author, which is we finish it and then
Mm-hmm.
we reread it and we're like, we're gonna change this, change that. And we reread it, we're like, all right, now we gotta change this and change that. And we become stuck on this cycle of wanting to perfect it. I mean, this is something a lot of people go through, not just with authorship and writing, but with a lot of things. We delay putting something out because we're just never we're and the truth is we're never going to be satisfied with it. That's just the truth. We will always find something to edit or to change. Or you mentioned a lot, I don't want to expose this part of me or this side of me. And reading through your writing, it felt like someone was just talking to you. It felt very natural and real. It felt very authentic. I didn't feel like someone wrote this and articulated it and had AI tweak it to be the most perfect professional message. This was like that raw truth. And there's a lot of things that you talked about that I related to because I came from my father was a addict. My mother didn't love me. I had issues at school, and we're gonna get into a lot of like every chapter. I was like, wow, this happened or this happened. So I want to start going back to you mentioned your mother's passing, and I'm gonna pull out a little extra truth to that from what I've read. It wasn't just a passing; it was a suicide.
Yep.
And so let's unpack that a bit
Mm-hmm.
because you got so real with it, talking about, and I don't want to spoil too much of the book, but
No, it's
the
okay.
way, even because of the way she had committed suicide, how affected you wearing tight clothing or like your whole piece about ties and suits. Like, so many people don't even realize how many levels a suicide can impact someone, not just in its happening, but how it happened.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it affected me to the core and to this day. And I did do a lot of processing in the last 7 or 8 years. So I'm better than I was,
Mm,
but that was after decades of trauma. She died when I was 4. I learned about how she died when I was 9.
right,
And that, as I mentioned in the book, was the worst day of my life. It was
right.
the next day. It was in school in shock, in having a shame attack, which is something
Mm,
I now know I identify as a shame attack, which I didn't know what that was at the time. Similar to a panic attack, but
right.
different at the same time, and just broken and
Mm,
traumatized. And I wasn't getting the kind of aftercare that maybe somebody would need. But I don't blame my caregivers per se, but they fucked it up really bad.
yeah.
Like they hurt me. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear any
Oh
podcast,
yeah,
but
yeah, you're good. You
um,
mentioned feeling neglected, left alone often,
yeah.
and what was really powerful for me was you saying your father initially didn't want to tell you how your mother had committed suicide, and you
Mm-hmm.
push, I need to know, I need to know, I need to know. I
Mm-hmm.
wish I didn't know. And that really was so relatable and human to me, because we want to know, and then we're like, I wish we didn't know, especially as children. As
Mm-hmm.
children, we're definitely curious about that. And I don't know at 9 years old if you even understand what suicide is, like it's trying to wrap your
Mm-hmm.
head around that and
I
everything.
understood. Well, I understood it well enough to know that it was,
Right.
it was, but yeah, I don't know. It's actually, I can't say how much I understood it. Like, I don't remember that much from when I was 9. I
Yeah, of
remember
course.
things that were said to me. And one thing that my stepmom said at one point was, well, you didn't seem to care that much. You were just kind of like, okay, whatever. And I remembered that. internal feeling. And I was like,
Right.
I was dissociating,
Right.
and that no professional, and there was professionals involved. They didn't know what the hell they were doing either. So it's like,
Sounds about right.
I mean, and the thing about that is coming out of that, it really kind of defined me. And it made me
Hmm.
think. One of the things I thought that day, the worst day of my life, is what are the other kids going to think? What are they going to do now? How are they going to use that against me? Because I was already being bullied, and I was
Right.
already
And you shouldn't
couldn't,
even have to worry about that,
of
you
course,
know.
yeah, of course not. But that was back in the 70s. I remember teachers saying, take it outside the school and go fight. It wasn't like I
Yeah.
wasn't protected, and I wasn't tough. I was heavy and, hated fighting and just wanted friends, But I mean, the circumstances from just really from birth made it impossible. It was like I never got the instruction book on how to make a friend.
Right.
And that was all the way up until the last few years. I have plenty of friends now, plenty. And like if I needed to make more friends, I know exactly how to do it. I'd go
Right.
find more friends. But for most of my life, that wasn't the case. And so her suicide affected me in that way. Like, what am I going to do now?
Mm.
All this was already wrong with me. Now they're going to use that. They're going to weaponize it. Because like, oh, your mother left you. She didn't even love you. She didn't like you.
Right.
You know,
And did you, before any bullying happened, did you even feel like she abandonment? Do you feel like I wasn't good enough to stay for my mother to care for me, or, you know, it was my fault or anything like that? And I mean, did you ever find out why your mother committed suicide?
only secondhand. I'll tell you, it was a very toxic family. My
Mm.
mother's side of the family had a history of mental illness. My aunt was schizophrenic and bipolar. My great grandmother was lobotomized way back
Wow.
in the day. So there was this secretive family history of mental illness and all that kind of
Mm.
stuff. Also, my mother had a child out of wedlock about 10 years before me.
Right.
So I might or might not have a half brother somewhere out in the world, or he might already be gone for all I
Mm.
know. I'm 55 years old. But I think that affected her deeply. She was forced to give it up. They were a deeply Catholic family.
Right.
A lot of things that went down. And then she had severe postpartum. So I was taken away from her for weeks or months when I was an
Mm.
infant. I don't even know who fed me. That alone is traumatic stuff that sort of got buried in my history.
Right.
And so the thing about that is she was extremely unwell, and it had nothing to do with me because I was four. But for
Mm.
me it's just like, if you loved me, why would you do that? Why would you leave? And there was a lot of rejection and abandonment feelings for most of my life.
For sure. And then I want to unpack because, I did read this much in your book that your mother, because of the wedlock situation, believed that you were going to be genetically cursed or come out deformed.
Something like that, yeah.
And I remember what shocked me most was you as a toddler
Mm.
in the crib with your feet shackled. And you talked
Mm-hmm.
about this medical device during that time period
Mm-hmm.
to prevent club feet.
Mm.
And I was having a conversation with a woman the other day who was like, well, children that age don't remember that much. We do. And it's weird though, because it's not everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's certain moments that just really imprint on us when we're babies or toddlers that we can remember and see so distinctly. And then the rest of the year will be a blur until another incident. And I think it's just really interesting what stays and what doesn't.
Oh yeah.
And that shame, I mean, we talked about shame, and your mother never did the healing of shame because of the wedlock, it sounds like,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, when you said you were born healthy and she just couldn't believe it, she didn't want to believe it. And so, again, almost making it your fault, not meaning to, but the pressure that puts on someone to say, hey, I think that, you're going to be cursed or born wrong because of what I did in the past,
Mm-hmm.
saying that to a child. And then again, I spoke recently about how the physical connection between mother and child and father and child during those years is impactful. In fact, there are studies now showing like how much impact the father's presence just outside of the womb during pregnancy can have on the child's
Mm-hmm.
development with hearing sounds and feeling and everything. So, fast forwarding, well, you mentioned being heavy,
Mm.
and I remember reading an overeating. We had an inner child that was focused on, I think it was like banana bread and raisins,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
what all these, and this is the thing I want to address because you talked about the inner children. When you talk with them in your book, the personification of them, they all kind of say something loving, like, I'm just trying to protect you. I'm just trying to take care of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it almost seems like the big journey is saying, I don't need your protection anymore, giving that reassurance. And
Mm-hmm.
some of them require a certain amount of reassurance that is hard to give or, require stuff beyond us. So let's fast forward to one thing that you mentioned that really resonated with me was you talked about the Brady Bunch. Now that's before my time period. I've never watched it. I've seen clips of it,
Hmm.
but I resonate with it deeply because I always compared my family to what you called the idealized family,
Hmm.
where there's loving parents, siblings, both sets of grandparents, right? The whole family, that classic family. And I didn't have that.
Mhm.
And I always wished, why can't I just have? And I did an episode where I talked about how this idealized family, which became a standard that's projected, can deepen the wounds of people who don't have it ultimately. And I like that you said, even though it's idealized, they still have their issues. But people focus sometimes so much on the good that they don't acknowledge the bad in comparison to what they're going through.
Mhm.
And I loved how you talked about the escapism and then how your father didn't understand why you would watch this show so much. This, you call it boob tube, as he
Mhm.
referenced.
Yep.
And I really resonated with that because I think a lot of us or consuming content like that. And that actually, more than ever before, social media has put forward so many idealized romantic relationships, families, and stuff. So I'd love for you to speak a little bit about that, about the balance of the idealized family, what you actually have, what you're trying to achieve. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being so thorough with the book too. I really appreciate. I can hear how it affected you, it impacted you. So I guess I did a good job, and it's nice, validating to hear talk
Yes,
about
yes.
specifics. I don't think I've heard about specifics from the book so much as today. And a lot of that, the infant stuff, that was one thing you talked about was from the crib.
Right.
This is all conjecture. It's just all, interactions I had with inner child. I don't know what actually happened. I don't know what
Mm,
what was done with my feet or whatever. I have a sense that I was a lefty and she was trying to force me to be a righty,
right.
which is weird enough. And I have
But
reason
that's
to
very common
suspect
from
that.
that time period, too.
Let's just suspect that. Like I'm a drummer, and when I first started drumming, I drummed from the left, which is
Mm,
unusual. Like, why would that be? And yeah, I think idealized families, okay, I'll say this, there are none. I'm
right.
pretty sure at this point, I think there's more unwellness in this world than wellness.
100%.
Even when people are well, they're still struggling. I think if somebody tells you they have it all figured out, they probably are missing something. I don't trust gurus. I don't trust people that,
Right.
even some of the, actually, I do like some of the mindfulness people. Eckhart Tolle, I've always loved. I read his book, The Power of Now, long ago, and I was trying to apply it, but I was a deeply addicted, sick
Right.
soul. I was like, just let it go and you'll be fine. And
Became
that
the
didn't
power
work
of
at all.
later for you.
It was totally the power
Okay.
of later. It was totally the power of later. But I like that guy, but he's shifting too. Like he's got
Mm,
new stuff out the last year or two.
yeah.
And he's talking about some of the stuff that we're talking about, which is like it does take time. And also you might not be
Yeah.
seeing everything you think that you're seeing. So yeah, the idealized family doesn't exist, I don't think. I haven't met them. I've met some people I really thought were, I mean, with the codependency, I used to hero worship people in a big way,
Right.
put them up on a
100%.
pedestal and make them into like a Christ figure almost. Like you can do
Right.
no wrong. And if I do what you want me to do, I'll be okay. I'll be validated. I'll be
Yeah.
safe and all that, which didn't work out. So, I mean,
Right.
and I don't ever want anybody to do that with me either. And if you're healthy, that doesn't happen. If somebody starts to try to get you to run their life, if you're healthy, you're going to back away from that because that does not feel comfortable for a healthy person.
Right.
That might feel groovy for an unhealthy person. Let me run your life so I don't have to look at mine too much, you know?
Mm. Hmm.
So all that is what I used to see as idealized. But for the Brady Bunch, I think it was really just numbing a lot of it. And, because the screen addiction thing, I mean, it's
Yeah.
worldwide now, and myself included. I'm doing those damn shorts all the time. I hate it, but I
Right.
do it. I
And
hate it, but I
you
do
wrote
it,
about
you know?
waking up. I don't want to instantly grab for my phone
Yeah.
and then still doing it or
Yeah.
trying not to.
Still
That's
working on
something
that. Yeah. Yeah.
that we all definitely deal with. And many
Yeah.
of us actually waking up in the middle of the night and grabbing for our phone. Did I get any new
Mhm.
notification? The fear of missing out has spread so
Yeah.
abundantly.
Yeah. And it's not,
100%.
yeah, absolutely. And so, but there was the beginnings of that with TV, which my dad he came from the generation where we had no TV. I went out and played baseball with my friends, whatever. And well, actually, I don't have any friends, first of all. And maybe it was easy for you to make them, but I don't know, So for me, like my friends were on the TV. And that family, and they used to say, my parents used to say, that's so unrealistic. And this is my stepmom in particular,
Right.
because fighting is realistic, screaming and yelling is realistic.
Hmm.
That's her reality. Her family was extremely toxic and screaming and yelling at each other, pulling hair, punishing the kids, doing all this fucked up shit.
Wow.
Yeah. and hurt people.
Right.
You learn that. But her saying the Brady Bunch is not realistic. Actually, my life today is a lot more like the Brady Bunch when it
Right.
comes to calm. Okay, something's going wrong. Let's figure this out. Let's not
Right.
condemn each other. Even the parents can be wrong. Well, actually, the parents are always right, but
Mhm.
in my life, the
Yeah.
parents can be wrong too.
Right.
You know.
Well, and you talked about that in the book. You wrote about how the Brady Bunch had their own issues, maybe not to
Hmm.
the big degree that some families experience.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, it was the resolution and the conflict resolution and communication style that
Hmm.
was the difference. And that's the thing. We see so much unhealthy communication in the world right now. In
Hmm.
fact, you spoke about more people are unwell than well. And I agree
I
with
think
that.
so.
And
Yeah.
I noticed this firsthand because I guest on all these podcasts and people always ask me, Mr. Whiskey, asking me about suicide prevention, about military matters, how the two were interconnected. And I said, here's the deal. We focus so much on combat related PTSD, on
Hmm.
military lifestyle, huge factors, 100%, but they are additionals because the truth is most people I served with in the military had a lot of childhood trauma. They
Hmm.
came from homes of addiction, of poverty, of unwellness, and that's not why they joined the military. Some of them to escape it, sure, but a lot of them, that's just what they grew up in my generation in particular. You look at millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, I don't know, whatever it comes after
The,
Gen Z, what the newer ones,
the psychopath
right,
people.
right,
Probably, oh
right.
my God, they're going to be killing us all.
And a lot of them are coming from divorced homes
Hmm.
or financially arranged marriages, unexpected pregnancies, a lot of unhealthy communication. We've got so much inundation from mainstream media, social media, all these different sources telling us stuff. And I said, when it comes to suicide prevention and the military matters, really it's just all these people never got healing. And here's the thing, we have so much focus and work out there right now for adults. All these books, all these podcasts, all these programs, therapy. I said, but none of our children and teenagers are getting them, and they're who needs it most. That trauma is most impressionable. I had a guest who called children sponges on the show, right? They absorb everything that's going on around them. And a lot of children are seen, not heard, you know? And I said, how much better would the military be, or the workplace, or the civilian work, adulthood, if before people left high school or between high school and college or the work world, they actually got to do healing. You know, I'm not going to say should it be government mandated or school mandated or whatever, but I think at minimum, us as parents need to do some kind of role to say, hey, we focus on we're sending our child out to the world. Let's make sure they had the right mindset about dating and taxes and career choices. But we never say, man, is there anything that happened in their childhood that we should be wondering how it affected them or anything I did as a parent? And so I think we talk about, and I think you've referenced it as well, we've got just a bunch of hurt children running around, pretending to be adults. And so I think it's really important. And one point you made that really stuck with me, and because this goes back to you were talking about making friends. It's still difficult. Now there's cyberbullying in addition to regular bullying. Imagine going home and getting bullied all day on
Hmm.
top of your family issues. It's a crisis for sure. You talked about a particular fight, so to speak, between you and a physically handicapped kid.
Oh God.
And I really like that part because when things went south, it became a blame game of blame the healthier person, right? The person who's not physically handicapped,
Right.
because even though it was both of you not wanting to hurt each other, right? Both of you had your own issues going on that caused conflict, but people automatically, had them at a lower status quo than you, therefore you're to blame. And what you talked about was both of you were handicapped in different ways, and people focused so much on the physical handicap that they neglected to acknowledge your struggles and difficulties. And I think that's so important because so many people were focusing on just what we can see. And we referenced earlier, you never know what's going on behind the scenes, right? Even these people who look like they had their lives put together, which social media makes it look like a lot of people had their lives together, we don't know what goes on before the camera starts recording and afterward, right?
Mhm.
There could be fighting, there could be financial crisis, there could be mental health struggles. And so I think that was a really important point. I'd love for you to just address a little bit about that. And to make it clear, you don't just go around pushing down handicapped people.
Thank
That's
you.
what they made you,
No,
that's what they try to villainize
I
you
didn't.
as. But
Yeah.
I think it's really important to see that especially in suicide prevention. I
Mm.
saw a great video the other day. It was these two guys running every day, and one guy seemed really depressed and didn't want to be there, and one guy smiling, talking to everyone, and he didn't show up one day. And the message was suicide isn't always what we picture it to be, right?
Yeah.
And I've dealt with this personally. I had people in the military who were going to commit suicide, and it wasn't the depressed guy next to me. It was actually the guy who qualified on time, was smiling, was talking to everyone. You can never see, and sometimes we focus so much on the visible rather than the invisible, and we don't take it into account.
Yeah, to check in with the people around us is really important. And if somebody seems okay, yeah, they're not always. There's been times in my life I certainly seemed okay, and I wasn't. Yeah, I was scapegoated in a huge way. That I was the scapegoat. If you look at those family dynamics they talk about,
Right.
the champion or whatever, the one that gets all A's, and then there's the one who
Mhm.
hides, there's the one that's scapegoated. I was absolutely scapegoated and always examined from what did you do wrong this time? Oh, and the reason you do things wrong is because your mother died. And so there was an
Mhm.
easy way to say, well, maybe it's not your fault so much, but you need to be
Mhm.
better. And yet my dad wasn't looking at his drinking. My stepmom wasn't looking at her controlling patterns.
Mhm.
And and so on. As for that, the guy, he had a prosthetic leg, and his name is Mike from Medford. I'm not going to name his last. I do know his last name, but if you're listening, Mike, I would love to talk to you, man, because I would like to apologize to this guy. He was also bullied. We both were,
Right.
and so it became for me. It's like, well, if he had the heat on him, the heat would be off me. I never meant to knock him down though. He was running, and I was trying to stop him, and I stuck my leg out, which kids did, right?
Right.
Which and he had a prosthetic leg. Kids would do that all the time, and you'd kind of trip, and then oh screw you,
Mm.
and whatever. But obviously he went down like a bag of
Right.
potatoes, and I didn't think that he would. I didn't intend that. But
Right.
then it was like you attacked that kid. And I was like, and the thing about that was, and I was talking to my sister about this at a certain point. What I apparently did, and I didn't remember this. My stepmom tells this story.
Mm.
Is I went home and I said some other kid did that, and then to sort of gauge, you know, and she's like, "Oh, that's really horrible," whatever. And I think the reason I put it that way was I
Mhm.
wanted to see, like, maybe you'll see his side of it or whatever. And but no, it was, and then she found out about it. She's like, "You lied to me. You said it was another kid. How dare you?" Blah blah blah.
Right.
But I
You're
think
trying to
really,
gauge it. I get
I
it.
really wanted to see, like, are you going to hear my side of it? Because I was,
Mm.
this thing happened between these two kids. What do you think?
Mm.
But man, I mean, that kind of thing. I do look back and I think I was just as wounded as him,
Mm.
but it was invisible. It was absolutely invisible. And on the bullying, cyberbullying, oh my God, I worry about my daughter. I have a beautiful daughter. She's an adult now, but still, she's on the internet sometimes. And I'm like,
Right.
stay away from that because I think I couldn't have taken it as a kid. I even worry now. I mean, it coming out
Right.
as an author and,
Yeah.
becoming kind of a public
I've
figure.
gotten hey comments on
Oh my God.
YouTube and
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah,
I know it's gonna happen. I'm
yeah.
not looking forward to it. But
You're
like
gonna
just
get
for the
that one
vitriol,
star review from someone who
sure.
doesn't like you
Yeah,
because of not
whatever.
even because the writing is bad or the message is bad, but
Mhm.
because of how it made them feel
Totally.
sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, or my views or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of the world. It's very sad.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
very
you wrote
sad.
about that. You
Yeah.
can't please everyone.
No.
And that's what holds us up sometimes is we're
Hmm.
trying to balance it. How can we make as many people, how can we please everyone?
Hmm.
And no matter what you do, there's going to be people who like you or don't like you,
Hmm.
you know. I think of Yeshua, aka Jesus Christ, morally righteous person who just went around healing, doing good, right? Even
Hmm.
if you disagree with him religiously, and people hated him and killed him, right?
Sure.
And it's like, are any of us as holy or as healing as him? So what do we think that we could please everyone? There's never been anyone who has, even
Hmm.
God in the form of man, and even God himself. Half the world renounces him and hates him. So, there's
Oh,
nothing
sure.
we could ever do.
I mean, on that issue, it's funny that you mentioned it because I used to call myself an atheist, right? And I'm a spiritual guy. I'm not in any particular denomination or whatnot,
Right.
but I hated God. I hated God for what he did to my mom. I hated God for the way he made me. And I didn't even realize that. I used to say, and I don't know if this is in the book, but I used to say there's three people I hate more than anything: God, myself, and my dad.
Mm.
And I couldn't even give you one, two, three on that,
Right.
but I was in the mix too.
Yeah.
I hated and disliked myself, and I hated God for that. So, yeah, I mean, that's exactly what you're saying. It's like you're not going to please everyone. Because to me, like now, like higher power, God, whatever you want to call it, is
Right.
essential in my life, a very loving presence.
Right.
So,
And
but I
that
get it. I
that
get
back
it.
and
I get
forth
it.
is in the
Like,
book
yeah,
pretty well
yeah,
as well.
definitely.
You
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about
Hmm.
everything that causes you to have doubt still with God, or
Sure.
this or that, to struggle, and
Hmm.
trying to bring God to hurt parts of you, especially trying to have that
Definitely.
conversation about God
Yeah.
with those inner children who are hurt. And one thing you mentioned your daughter, and what I liked was that you hold yourself accountable in the book, because you talk about your father called it the boob tube, right? You
Hmm.
watching the Brady Bunch, but you in the book you're like, but Dad, you were watching sports. I mean,
Hmm.
why were you so invested in these other people's lives, right? Playing sports,
Hmm.
isn't that a form of escapism as well,
Sure.
right? And then you talked about your daughter watching anime, and
Hmm.
we're here in
Hmm.
Japan, so it's right. And you unintentionally, kind of not to the same degree as your father, but kind of judging, like, why are you watching this stuff? Or but
Hmm. Hmm.
you not saying, I wonder if it means to her what the Brady Bunch meant to me.
Hmm.
And I'm glad I read that, because when I have children, I'm sure, because I look at some of the TV shows now that children are watching, I'm like, what is this stuff? And you do need to be discerning 100%, because there's a
Hmm.
lot of, for lack of better words, bull crap out there
Sure.
that's not good for your kids to
Yeah.
watch. But it definitely helped me think, like, yeah, I wonder if I look at it, is this show to them what that show was to me? Putting it into that empathetic perspective, that really resonated with me, what you wrote about, and the idea of, you know what, I can't be like my dad. And I wonder if my dad was judged for his actions by his dad. Like you talked about the generational cycles.
Oh God. Yeah. And I hate getting called out on that too, because it's like, oh man, I just did what, and I mean, I lived that in my life. I
Yeah.
had an alcoholic dad and I was an alcoholic dad. So even
Mm,
beyond that, the criticisms, which are each one is hurtful, right?
right.
But then talking about escapism, my dad was
Hmm.
drinking. What more escape is that?
Right.
Right. And so
100%.
I can't watch TV, but you're having a whiskey. Which one of us
Right.
is, wrong? But the thing about that is I do try to check myself, and
Yeah.
I find myself doing that with my daughter. But we have our relationship is amazing. I love her. We
Mm.
had lunch together. She lives down the street. She is a very wise, very cool person. And I'm not just saying that because I hope she watches this show. But the thing is, healing takes two also. Once you break that generational trauma, and I
Right.
did break it, she worked at it just as much as I did. And she didn't have to.
Mm.
She had every right to say, get out of my life
Right.
at age 14, because
Mm.
that's, I harmed her until I stopped drinking. And even as I was,
Right.
still healing.
Yes.
And I'm capable of harm. We all are, I have good days and bad days. But at the same time, I was working towards healing conversations, healing the relationship. And so was she. I tell you, the first trip we ever took after I got sober, we went up to Hokkaido for 8 days,
Mm.
and we were fighting like cats and dogs the whole trip. And I could tell we were both trying not to too. We'd like
Right.
ease up the fight and make up. And then 10 minutes later, some other thing would flare up. And it's just
Hmm.
like, we couldn't stand the tension in that relationship, but we were both invested in fixing it and healing. And she's my kid. I'm her dad. It's really hard to throw that away,
Right.
no matter what's happened. So I have all the gratitude in the world for the work that she did,
Mm.
because I owed that to her. She didn't know me anything. It's never the
Right.
kid's fault.
Well, and so in my situation, my father's still addicted to drugs and alcohol and women, and doing a lot of escapism, a lot of all kinds of bad stuff. And I'm the only child of his who has not abandoned him. My
No.
sister said no. And he's hurt all three of us, me the most, actually. But, I don't say that as bragging rights for staying, but for me, working in addiction recovery, interviewing hundreds of people,
Mm-hmm.
I think you have a choice as a child of addiction. You have three choices, really. You leave,
Mm.
you stay in and enable, or what I've learned to do the hard way, it was not easy, was forgiveness with boundaries, right?
Mm.
So I used to enable him, and I used to let him use me like a doormat, and it was really unhealthy and harmful.
Mm.
There came a point where I've set boundaries, and I've had to abandon him on holidays because he was not sober, like he said he was, or if he drinks too much, there's certain points where I won't see him or cut off contact, but it's never 100%. If I have to wait for him to heal or to sober up or whatever it is. And I think as children, we have a choice to try and understand addiction
Mm.
and the struggle of our parents. My sisters have never tried to understand my dad's pain, but
Mm.
I've sat with him. I've had conversations, and I know he was a police officer for 25 years, and I've interviewed a lot of first responders. And people think of police, they think of nowadays this police brutality and just traffic tickets.
Mm.
But I've talked to my father, I've interviewed people on the show responding to suicides, homicides, fighting criminals sometimes at their own physical expense.
Mhm.
My dad has had to perform CPR on toddlers drowned in lakes. He's had to move dead bodies, right? As a first responder, there's a lot more to it. So that on its own is a traumatizing life, combined with stuff from his childhood, because we all have stuff from our childhood. And then, the passing of his mother at the same time he retired, which was a huge milestone, really messed him up. And I've gotten to explore the depths of those pain and understand how powerful addiction is, the desire of an addict to not want that lifestyle, to want to be better, but to still relapse. I mean, I'm sure you struggled for years. You understand you
Yep.
can want to get better and relapse, but it doesn't mean that you no longer want to get better, right? You can still
Mhm.
be pursuing it and failing along the way.
Sure.
And my sisters, which are his daughters, gave up on him, and I haven't. And they asked me even, they said, "Why do you still talk to dad? He's a maniac. He's crazy. He's this, that." And I said, number one, he's our dad. And I said, and titles and blood relations shouldn't define everything,
Mm.
right? Because there are unhealthy people in our lives who are family. But I said, he's our dad. He's a human being. And I said, we are called for forgiveness. You talk about unconditional love, showing the love and forgiveness that God has shown us to people in our lives, which is
Mm.
hard for us to do sometimes. And I said, I also have hope because I've interviewed people on my podcast who were addicted for over 30 years, over 40 years, who didn't get sober until they were in their 70s. It's never too late.
Mm.
And I said, a lot of addicts lose hope in themselves. How much more important it is that we have hope in them. Again, with boundaries and protections. And that has to be their choice. I can't convince them. But so I understand. And to see your daughter pursue that, I don't know how much she understood about your addiction, or did you ever even have like a conversation with her about addiction or
Oh,
anything?
all the
Or
time.
okay.
All the time.
It wasn't like an unspoken thing.
No, no. You mean when I was actively addicted?
Yes.
No, after I quit.
But
So
beforehand, I mean,
no, because
obviously
I
she
didn't see it
knew,
myself. I didn't see it
or
myself, but
oh,
yeah,
okay.
obviously she knew. But the funny thing, we have talked about it and her feelings at the time. I've asked her what I've done that harmed her, so I would know. And
Right.
some of it was done as I was intoxicated or didn't even remember. And she
Mm,
told me some things that really shocked me that I'd done it. But I would also say this blew my mind because I started a little bit late actually because I was drumming. So
mm,
I'm a professional drummer. I
right.
actually did a bunch of clinics in Indonesia last year. I have a great
Oh,
friend that
wow.
used to drum at Disneyland down the street here.
Oh, okay.
And so, for a while that saved me. I didn't need to turn to like drugs or alcohol. I was able to sort of like manage my life with the drumming, but then the substances sort of like
Right.
pushed that out. At that point, I think I was just like straight out gone in my 20s and my 30s and into my 40s. That's what I would have told you. And there's
Mm,
evidence all the way along the way. But she said she thought at some point that she said, you seemed okay until I was like 10. And
mm,
then I started noticing it and you seemed to get worse. And I don't think that was the case. I think I was just able to hide it from her for
mm,
that long. So I was able to like be in the other room and put on the fake face or whatever.
right.
And then at a certain point, when she gets old enough, just like I was asking about my mom,
Mm,
and I think she said around 10, I couldn't hide it anymore. She's getting
mm.
older. She's walking in the room. She's seeing what I'm doing. So, okay, now I'm not trying to hide it. And now she suddenly thinks I suddenly ramped up,
Oh,
but I
okay.
don't think that was the case. I think I was just hiding it successfully until I couldn't,
Mm,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
I will say sometimes, so opposite in my case, I mean, or rather, my father is typically exponential too. And
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
say there was a turning point of my father retiring and his mother passing away at the same time, and he saw her every single day. So,
Mm-hmm.
in retirement after 25 years of service for any first responder is a huge deal, and military.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them will, a lot of studies show that they'll pass away within the 2 to 3 years after retirement if they don't get a new identity and hobby or something, ground themselves. A
Oh,
lot of
really?
them just pass away, especially from addiction, right? Because their identity gets so anchored to who they were in service for
Right.
that long. And I've had a lot of episodes on that, on the importance of identity outside of military and first responder. The thing is, it's such a more ingrained identity than working at the office per se, because you live at the office,
Mm-hmm.
you work at the office on weekends and holidays and stuff. And it's more, the military isn't just a career, it's a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a balance to it, and you can separate them to a degree. But all that to say that, yeah, I remember it was like a turning point for my father where it did get worse,
Mm.
or he was hiding it less. But my father, for many years, was a functioning. And to your daughter's point, there is an age where you start to realize stuff.
Yeah.
There came an age where I realized, oh, my dad isn't addicted to drinking Gatorade. He has vodka in the Gatorade bottles. But growing up, I said, oh, my dad really loves Gatorade. Every boardwalk, every movie, everything we go to, he's always drinking Gatorade. He had vodka in it. I would have never known as a kid, but there came a certain age where you see him pouring it into the bottles, or we go out and he's like, hold on, I gotta take a break, and you find him with the airplane bottles.
Yep.
So I think it is a thing too where it seems to get worse, but it's because now we're old enough to pick up and notice that stuff, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And then you talked about drumming, and I want to relate that this percussion work, so I'm going to bring it back to piano playing because I read about that.
Yep.
That really resonated with me as well, and I think this will resonate with a lot of people listening. If only you applied yourself. You talked about hating those words. I hate those as well because the connotation with them is people assume that we're not applying ourselves rather than we don't want to be doing this. And I think there's a huge thing to understand there when it comes to, we've talked about parenting and forcing your children to do sports or instruments rather than guiding and leading by passion and them wanting to do something. In my life is a great example. My parents came to me and they said, son, you got to do a sport. I said, okay. They said, what sport do you want to do? I said, I'd really like to do hockey. They said, no, too dangerous, too expensive. You have to pick a different sport. And I said, well, I really want to do hockey. They went so far to discourage me as to drive me to their adult friends' houses whose children played hockey to lecture me on how expensive and dangerous and timely practice is, and they wish their kids never did it. And that far to convince me. Then they signed me up for lacrosse behind my back.
Oh, man.
And I said, lacrosse is also expensive and dangerous. This doesn't make any sense. And I missed the age cutoff or something by a day or so. I didn't, they said no sports. Now you got to be a band kid. So pick an instrument. And I said, well, I'd like to play guitar. It's pretty portable and you can play it anywhere. And you could do from faith music to country to romance. It's pretty versatile.
Yep.
They said, too many people play guitar. That's too common. You'd be like the everyday average Joe. You got to pick something else. So, okay, I'd like to learn piano, be a classy gentleman, very romantic, nice places. That's too common. You got to pick something else. And so I ended up playing the violin. Can never make your parents happy, apparently. But all that to say, it's not just about sports or instruments or grades. It's if only you applied yourself. And there's a couple things with that. One, you're assuming that I'm not applying myself, which if you are, can be a huge insult and shame. It can bring a lot of shame. Or two, you're trying to force such a lifestyle on me. So when it came with you in the piano, you mentioned briefly in the book that it actually made you the cool guy for a little bit because, you impressed everyone and then, it goes back. And I love your whole analogy of being on stage. Everyone's not forced, but it's hard for them to not give you attention or to ignore you. So let's unpack that a little bit, especially your view on the not applying yourself.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing some of your life too. And I'm a little sad hearing it. It sounds like you were being controlled. That would have made me crazy. And it sounds like it made you crazy. Hopefully the violin was cool for you, in the end.
It was until...
You don't look like a violin guy. I could see the guitar in your hands. I could see the piano maybe, but...
Right. But I will say I was a violin prodigy, actually. Okay. It turned out I was the new student at the private violin group.
Okay.
And after just a few days, I was outperforming their star violinist.
Nice.
And I had a natural gift for it, except I would write letters under the music notes. I didn't know how to read music. So I would write the letters and but I was doing great. And then it came to a moment where they had a talent show and I was going to play My Heart Will Go On, Celine Dion on the violin. My music teacher said, well, by itself, it's kind of lackluster. Let me play the piano with you at the talent show. I said, all right. And we go to perform. She grabs my violin. I said, whoa. Don't try to tune it or mess anything with it, because it's structured very well. I don't know how to do that stuff yet. And she messed with it, and actually 2 strings broke.
Oh, man.
And I had to go up there with a broken violin, and she played the piano so much louder with a microphone that it was just a failure of a performance. And I've actually never played since then.
Oh, man.
Because when my violin was broken, then my violin instructor moved away, and I had a nice tiger stripe wood violin as well, but Yeah, for just to mention briefly the controlling household. Yeah, my
Mm.
my parents actually picked my friends and enemies for me
Oh,
because I remember, I'll never forget this. I was in a private school. It was a corrupt Catholic private school. And actually, to go back to your point, we had a new student came in when I was in fourth grade. He was in third grade, but he was so smart that he would take fourth grade math with us. And then he skipped a grade and came to our grade.
hmm.
And he began to bully people.
Okay.
And it ended up being an agreement where everyone, his new best friend was my best friend, and he stole him from me. So me and this new kid had beef over that. And he made an agreement with everyone he bullied. If we all bully Mr. Whiskey together, I won't bully anyone else.
Oh man.
And they made an agreement. You were talking about agreements.
Hmm.
And even with the handicap kid, if the heat's on him, less heat's on me. They all said, all right, we'll join together to bully Mr. Whiskey so that
Hmm.
this guy's not bullying us.
Right.
Mind you, by this time, each year at that private corrupt Catholic school with wicked leadership, it got smaller and smaller.
Mm.
By the last year, I think there was only 6 other kids in my class for the whole grade. But when it's 5 or 6 against one, that's a big ratio.
Hmm.
And teachers didn't understand. And you can't you try to explain stuff to teachers and they just say, "Oh, kids are just being kids," or they just so oftentimes our parents or teachers are dismissive of stuff because they're like, "Oh, kids just make a big deal, they exaggerate." And I don't know, for me, what I've been through, and I imagine with you, what you've been through with your daughter, or if one of my kids came up to me and said XYZ is happening, at least I'm grateful that I'm more inclined to believe them because I'm like, hey, some of the stuff that happened at school, especially you talked about outside of school grounds,
Yeah.
but it's school
Yeah.
people, people wouldn't believe that this was actually happening. In fact, I interviewed a gentleman the other day when he was 14 in high school. Him and these other guys went to a strip club in Mexico, gave money to a person to get them drugs. Person
Hmm.
didn't come back. They kidnapped another person and held them hostage to get the drugs and money. And
Okay.
they were in high school.
Wow.
Sometimes people are, that's why I'm
Good.
like, but my parents were dismissive of it, this and that. When I transferred to public school,
Hmm.
I was dreading it. My father had painted this picture that public school was a
Worse.
heathenistic war zone, right? And blah, blah, blah. But I transitioned great. Everyone was like, we got a new student. People were like, come over to my house, made friends instantly.
Yeah.
I go home, I tell my parents, I'm like, hey, I made all these new friends on the first day. They want me to come over to spend time with them, get to know them.
Mm.
My dad said, no, you're not allowed to talk to any of those people. I've arrested some of their parents or I've dealt with some of their family members. And he projected what parents did onto their children, which is wrong.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to be friends with them. And at that time, I didn't know how to explain it. As a kid, I didn't know how to say, my dad said I'm not allowed to be friends with you, right? And so it ended up I became enemies with everyone who wanted to be my friends.
Right.
And there was also times where I would get death threats from people I never met them before in my life.
Hmm.
Your dad arrested me, put me in juvie,
Oh.
right?
Hmm.
And the blame came on to me that my father arrested them for doing some criminal action that they shouldn't have been doing.
Hmm.
And I grew up in a household where people just hated me by association of who my parents were. And I've talked to a lot of first responders now, and there's like this unspoken rule that my dad didn't follow. Don't be an officer in the town you're raising your family.
Oh.
It's just, it's not safe, number one.
Hmm.
It's kind of awkward, Like I met a friend once for a drink at a bar he worked as a prison guard, and he leans over, he's like, hey, don't look or anything. There's a guy at the bar that I had kind of spit on and kicked when he was in prison because I like to bully the inmates, and he's sitting at the bar right now. He got released.
Let's get out of here.
I was like, dude, why am I always associated with some kind of person like this? Why does I said I had nothing to do with this.
Hmm.
He goes, I know. And he was a bad person because he became a prison guard for the
Mm.
sole purpose to physically abuse inmates and get away with it.
Some people do. Yeah.
This is what he said to me. He goes, I get to look murderers and serial killers in their eyes and tell them I'm gonna, pipe down their mother tonight, and they can't do nothing about it.
Mm.
And I said, if these people escape, man, I don't know who you are. I've never met you. I'm gonna say you bullied me too. That I'm gonna make up some backstory. But so yeah, I came from a very controlling, abusive house. So I remember only ever snuck out of the house one time
Mm.
to meet a girl, just to walk her dog with her down the street I lived on.
Hmm.
My dad went out in a cop car to find me. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So you mentioned, you were like, sounds like controlling, abusive household. It
Yeah.
was. And this is on top of domestic violence, sexual violence, emotional verbal abuse, weaponized religion. we talked about shame, and unfortunately, so many people are against religion or the faith because people weaponize it to shame others, to put
Sure.
other people down.
Yeah,
And so, yeah.
that's another, yeah, religious abuse also.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry to hear all that.
I
But
jokingly say it's like I went to a restaurant and I was like, I'd like to have one of everything, please.
mhm.
Only it wasn't a dessert menu, it was an abuse menu.
Yeah,
I was like, it's the Chili's triple dipper. But
I think it tends to go like that
yeah,
though. I mean, it tends to go like that because abuse is abuse, and
yeah,
looking for vulnerabilities, right? Sometimes
yeah.
it's verbal, sometimes it's physical,
Well, and
sexual. It can,
my parents had never healed from their childhood trauma.
yeah.
My mom had dealt with sexual abuse, racism, all kinds of stuff.
Hmm.
My father had his own relational issues and stuff. And so, I mean, you talked about your dad with
Hmm.
addiction and stuff. And I mean, obviously there was something there that caused him to go into that lifestyle. And I don't know if you ever had that conversation or unpacked that with him. Like I said, I
Yeah,
didn't finish your book, so
yeah. No, that's not in the book, but I have talked to him about some of that stuff because it was a little weird because my dad's side of the family seems on the face of it pretty normal. And I think he was the black sheep or the scapegoat. So,
mm,
but I have come to realize my grandmother's in the book, who I loved very much. And she was my mother figure after my mom died.
mm,
But I also think that was my first codependent relationship
mm,
because not because she was doing anything on purpose, but she was like telling me about her feeling bluesy or something. She used to say that to me and she would be crying and stuff. And I was
mm,
little, I was a kid. And it's like, why are you putting these adult things on a child? It doesn't make sense. Why aren't you talking to peers or whatever? That was
mm.
weird and not okay. But then that got into sort of a trauma bond kind of things. I have to protect this adult,
Right.
and then but I would feel if I then I felt like a burden if I asked, oh, grandma, I need some money or something, or grandma, I need this or
Mm.
that. And it's like, oh, she would do it, but she would, say, oh, you need to take, whatever. I started feeling like a burden, everything that I
He
did.
had lived through the
Yeah.
depression, right?
She
Is that
did.
the
Yeah.
same?
Yeah. She's the one that taught
Yes,
me all about
that was
financial insecurity. Oh my God. I'm still to this day working on that
yeah.
crap. The whole,
Well, you're around my dad's
yeah.
age, and his
Hmm.
grandma had lived through the depression as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
and he talked about her penny pinching because of the
Hmm.
paranoia
Yeah.
that they were going to lose everything again. And
Yes.
I remember reading
Yeah.
that, and I said, "Oh my goodness, my great grandmother was the same exact way."
Yeah. I think I might be breaking the cycle. I bought some SpaceX a couple days ago. We'll see how that goes. I'm
Yeah.
already down. I don't want to tell too many people that truth, but no, I mean that to me, like it seemed healthy on the surface,
Mm,
right? But in the end, I'm like, yeah, that didn't seem too healthy. And then my dad did tell me some stories. There was four, but my uncle came much, much later. So there was basically three: older sister, my dad, and younger sister. And according to him, my grandpa was never around. He was working three jobs,
mm,
and the two sisters would bully him or gang up on him,
mm,
and then my grandmother would take their side. So it was
mm.
three women against him. That
Right,
was his childhood. And I don't know the extent that they were doing harm. He didn't talk about it that much. He was a
right.
quiet guy.
Yeah.
But we did talk about that stuff, and that was a blessing for me because I was able to do enough of my own work. And I think he was trying to. He never got well.
Mm,
He did stop drinking because of major health problems, which, according to some theorists, there's heavy drinker versus alcoholic. I don't know how I feel about that
oh,
sort
okay.
of thing, but
All
if
right.
you wanted to technically, but whatever it was, you know, an abusive drinker that harmed me. So,
Well,
you
you
know,
went through addiction later on.
yeah,
Did that help you understand him better?
yes, exactly, totally, because I did a lot of the same things to my own kid,
Mm,
and then or worse. And then I was
mm,
like, oh yeah, I think about my sister because she was much more unforgiving
mm,
when we've talked. But as far as I know, she hasn't had any substance addiction issues or
mm,
anything. I think once you've gone through some of those same things, you can start to see. Like my dad used to be a guy who used to always say, "Oh, I'm comfortable in my own skin. I'm just as good as anyone else." Haha, But he reeked of discomfort,
mm.
just like I did.
Yeah.
And when I look back, I'm like, I don't think that he believed what he was saying. I think he was just trying to say it. And I would try to say it. And then I'm like,
Right.
no, that's not true.
Well, and you
Like,
wrote about even as a child how his size before and after work affected your views on work. Like
mm-hmm,
the book kind of opens, I hate work. There should be no work, like
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
because your father said, "Oh yeah, work is fine," but the heavy size
yeah.
expressed differently, and I
Mm-hmm,
think that's powerful. One lesson that you just shared that's really important with your grandmother
mm-hmm,
is the difference between this relationship is set up so that I can share this information, but does that mean I should share this information based off the level of the person receiving it. You know, just because someone is a trusted and close person who you can express these things to, does that mean they should be receiving that, or how will it shape them? In your case, as a child, maybe your grandma should have been talking to you about this stuff. And actually, there was a guy on my podcast who was saying sometimes, like, you just need a guy friend to share some stuff about that you shouldn't burden your wife with, right? You know, not because you don't trust her or love her or because she doesn't have great insight, but because some of that stuff, like a lot of the first responders, they get home from work and wife is like, how was work? Oh, it was fine, just a regular shift. He doesn't want to say, actually, you know, I had to arrest a guy who, and this is a real story, took a spoon, scooped the eyes out of an old lady, and made her eat them. Right? He doesn't. He goes, look, I can tell my wife about that stuff, and she'll comfort me and talk to me. I don't want to have to burden her with the atrocities of this world. I don't want. Same with my kids.
Sure.
You know, so I think there's a level of self-awareness, social awareness that you got to apply to, like, because this relationship can handle this, does it mean it should? Right? I think that's an important lesson, especially when communicating with children and teenagers. And we see, actually, I had an episode not too long ago about when parents become best friends with their children to a degree that is unhealthy. You know, there's an unhealthy degree of sharing or looseness of boundaries and stuff, or enablement. You know, in fact, the gentleman shared his dad bought him a prostitute for his 16th birthday and said, welcome to manhood. And the path that set him up on, he ended up becoming a sex drug addict, and his life was destroyed. Right. And now he's trying to help other men parent better, because sometimes we're enabling in ways that are not healthy. You know?
And my dad gave me beer when I was 12 or 11 or 10, something like that.
Yeah. A lot of them see it as initiation
up,
of manhood,
well,
or
10,
just
10,
you're right.
A little too young.
Right, exactly.
Technically 20's too young, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
yeah, honestly.
that was an alcoholic trying to get
right.
some kind of connection.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
that's not, you know.
And that's the sad part. My father, I refused to drink with him. You know, now he raised me his whole life. He said, I hate being an addict. I don't want to be an addict. I don't want you to be an addict. I would never want this life for you. The agony I feel of withdrawals, of relapse, of trying to get better, of failing. He goes, it's miserable. And he goes, I'm just drinking until one day it kills me. I don't want that for you. And so he was very anti-alcohol for me, like completely villainized it, completely misconstrued what it was, made it up to be this thing that it wasn't, because of what it had done to his life. Right. Now, I never wanted to drink because of what it had done to my family and his life and the lives of other addicts I knew, but I do drink socially now. And now that I drink socially, my father said, oh, well, let's drink together then. And I refused to drink with him because he's an addict. And he's like, well, it's a father-son bonding experience. I said, it could be under better circumstances.
Yeah.
But for me to drink with you is actually just enablement. And he tried to pull, I guess, you know, and I'm sure you can attest to this. Addicts are great at rationalizing and justifying anything, you know, especially when it comes to drinking, whether it's a holiday, every day's a holiday. You know, he said, well, I'm going to drink either way. So you might as well join me and get this father-son time that you're not going to have.
Or you could not drink.
Right. But in his mind, you know, he's trying to say, right. And sometimes people will fall for traps that look like bonding, but are enablement, or, you know, and
that could pertain to so many things.
Too. Right. I mean, beyond alcohol.
It makes so much sense to me that you feel that way. My daughter, I think, rarely drinks. I was very careful to her. I said, look, if you want to drink, drink. If you don't want to drink, don't drink. That don't think, you know, you need to be afraid of it necessarily. Maybe there is hereditary components. Be aware of that fact, but don't be afraid of it or whatever. Just decide what you want to do. You're an adult. And I think she rarely drinks. And I think that's because of me. And that's okay. But it's like if you were friends with a compulsive overeater and they said, oh, let's go out and, you know, let's go out and eat, you know, and then you watch them really bored. Yeah, really. I mean, if they're really like, you know, sweating and addictively stuffing themselves, it's not an enjoyable thing to watch. You know, and that's, and I mean, that's maybe a bad example because a lot of people do that, but you know.
Well, in knowing that it's killing them, that it's ruining their life too, I mean, there's a guilt, you know, you're enabling them. And some people can say it's their choice, you know, like me being here doesn't play a factor in it, but there's a bit of bystanderism there that there's, and for me to explain, because of your daughter's situation, for me, I had swore not to drink. And then a buddy of mine pulled me aside. He goes, Mr. Whiskey, you haven't chosen not to drink.
Mhm.
You're just living in fear of what your father has portrayed it to be and what you believe it could make you.
Mm.
Until you try drinking and then choose to stop, you're not in control. And I really thought about that, and I said, well, this is a risky situation. What if I start drinking?
Well,
So I said, I'm going to write a letter and have you sign it that blames you for everything, and that you can
yes,
read
right.
it out loud at my funeral and everything. But when I drank,
Mm.
I didn't instantly become an abuser or black out. Or, like, my perception of what alcohol did to a person
Mm.
was so extreme because I had always been witnessing the extreme end of it.
Right.
You know, and even looking at TV shows and media, drinking, it was always exaggerated to, it became a big party because they're
Mhm.
trying to promote drinking,
Sure.
or it led to some kind of sexual encounter or some abuse or something, right? I never even saw just like regular social drinking because a lot of times when there's alcohol involved in media, it's some kind of dramatic cinematic event. And so for me, first time I tried alcohol, I mean, it was kind of just a drink, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm cautious about it though, because of
Sure.
my family background, my father's history.
Yeah.
I don't drink if I'm in a bad mood. I
Mm.
try not to drink alone. You know, I only drink on social occasions.
Mhm.
And if it's a great event and I'm drinking and suddenly it's a bad time, then we stop.
That
Not
sounds pretty
everyone.
normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Well, I know
mm.
plenty of people who, if a good time turns bad, they drink even more, you know?
Well,
So,
that's what are you doing it for, right?
right,
Yeah.
right. And so that's why I'm very cautious around it. Now
Mm.
let's get into, so the book we've referenced so much,
Yeah.
Wounded Angels. I want to talk about that. You mentioned a little bit about the writing process, talking about the name, why you chose that name, and everything that it's kind of done for you and what you're hoping it'll do for others.
Sure. I didn't choose the name. The inner child did. And that's why actually I've had a number of people tell me the name sucks and that I
Mm,
should change it. And I'll never sell books if I don't change it. Wounded
mm,
Angels is the name of it. And I did give some thought to it because I thought, well, am I self-aggrandizing, calling myself an angel, whatever? It's my inner child in this book. But I mean, when I look back at that kid, those kids when I was 4 or 9, whatever,
mm.
I was looking at an angel that was hurt, wounded. So it makes a lot of sense to me, Wounded
Right,
Angels. And I'm keeping the name. So whether, for better or
right.
worse,
And most of them were formed to protect you, right? And
yeah.
angels historically have a protective uh, aura, guardianship around them, right? People
Mm-hmm.
talk about guardian angels. Even in the historical accounts of the Bible, you look at biblical scripture, all the angels were tasked with either offensive or defensive parts of protection, of service,
Makes
right?
sense.
And
Yeah.
so these inner children, like you said, whether it was you have different names for them, the firefighter, the overeater, like all these
Yeah.
different things, numbing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them can seem like bad coping vices, and some of them are, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately it was done to protect you, right? Or to protect some part of yourself.
The subconscious is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
It's genius.
Yeah.
It's like you would almost say that it was like beyond human. You know what I
There are
mean?
people who get
It's
physical reactions as protective mechanisms around certain
I
things.
do very much now. Actually, I do very much now that I'm more mindful. And there was one situation, and this involves a person in the book very deeply, actually, the
Mm,
person who I ended up getting the re-traumatization
mm,
issue at the end, which connected to the 9-year-old trauma,
mm.
which is basically chapter 1 and the last chapter of Wounded Angels, right?
Okay.
This person, and I don't have any judgment about this person. I know how this person affected me.
Mm,
And I definitely deified this person. I made him into a Christ figure and all these kinds of
mm,
things, and just thought, if you approve of me, I'll be
mm,
okay. But I used to get violently sick when I'd go to see him.
mm,
Like literally, like he lived a couple hours away. I took the train across Tokyo,
mm.
and I would get my stomach would clench up. I'd have to run into the department store and go to the bathroom because I was like just. And I thought, oh, maybe because I like him so much, I'm just nervous to hang out with him or whatever.
Mm.
But when I look back on it, I think that was my body reaction to feeling like this is kind of predatory. This is not good for you. This is not.
Right.
It's like I was, behaving as prey does when the
Mm.
rabbit sees the shadow of the hawk,
Right.
they shit themselves and all kinds of stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And again, no judgment on any other person. I'm just saying my reaction
Right.
was like, you should not be around this person.
Right.
And I was ignoring my body completely and just like, oh no, no, no. I need this person.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out I didn't. And all the people that I had these toxic relationships with, which
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe Codependent relationships are always a two-way street. It's not like one codependent person and one healthy person. That's not how it is. Water seeks its
Right.
own level, and we're all doing this dance, right? And all those relationships that were bad for me are gone now, and for the better for all concerned, I think. And I've replaced them with some healthier relationships and some renewed relationships. There were people that didn't go away. We, grew together, including my daughter, obviously, but other people who were willing to be open-minded about their side of it, my side of it. Okay, let's have a healing conversation. Where can we go with this?
Right.
So to all the way circle back to what you asked, I think that's what I would like people to get from Wounded Angels, to sort of see my process of healing, what healing feels like, including that kind of thing, and sort of find their own way. Because it's not a how-to. It's not read Wounded Angels and do what I did.
Right.
That's like, it's the opposite. It's more like, what are you going to find in your life? What's stuck for you? And, I talk about the technique of the triggers.
Right.
And, using that to get in touch with these frozen angels. Yeah.
And one thing, and maybe you could talk about codependency to this degree when it comes to more romantic relationships, or it could even be friendships, but not loving yourself. So if this person loves me enough, then I can love myself or appreciate myself. Or we talk all the time on the show about that. I was in some relationships where my partner did not love themselves, and constant reassurance wasn't enough. I had some relationships where complimenting them 5 to 6 times a phone call, dates, 5 times a week, flowers this many times a month isn't enough. Like, they just constantly need more and more because they don't love themselves. And so they want this constant reassurance of, you're pretty, you're beautiful, you're this, that. Or they say, you need to love me for me and you. And that's a lot to put on a person. It's very draining. It can take away the specialness, the romance, and the true feelings behind compliments, gestures, and other things. But unfortunately, a lot of people, especially, I'll use the terms nowadays, daddy issues and mommy issues. We see a lot of people who, because of the lack of parental love, the types of relationships that they pursue. And then we've also discussed on the show, a lot of us gravitate towards relationships that our parents had with each other, whether that was good or bad. Now, you came from a home of separation, passing away. What was the relationship between your stepmom and father like? Because it didn't sound like a good one. And I've only read a little bit about it. So,
and there's not a lot about her in the book because my dad was key in a lot of the inner child work. My stepmom wasn't so much, but they were together from when I was 6, and then I left home when I was 14.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
yeah, I didn't make it that far.
Right. Oh, sorry. Spoiled it. I left home when I was 14, but they divorced when I was like 18 or 19. And then he passed away with his third wife, a lovely woman named Tina. He tried to get me to call her mom. I was like, no. She's like kind of closer to my age. And I'm like, she's Tina. Hey, Tina, if she's watching. But, he's did 3 wives. That's one thing. And their dynamic was yelling and screaming. Like she was a yeller and screamer. I don't know if she is anymore. I mean, I visit her on holidays and whatnot. Very dramatic. She once said to me, this wasn't in the book, but she once said to me, she's like, she was in the kitchen. She was yelling at me about something. And she said, take this knife and stick it in me. Just stick it in my chest right here. That's how much you're hurting me.
Wow.
I was like, I don't know how old I was. I was younger than 14. What?
Right.
So dramatic, right? That was not right that she did that. And I look back at that and I'm sitting there going, oh, no, I'm so sorry. No, I'm not trying to hurt you. And that's exactly what you're talking about. That's manipulative, right? I'm supposed to say, I'm so sorry. I'm terrible. I shouldn't be hurting you. I'm really hurting you. This is toxic stuff, right? And the same thing with the say you love me, say you like me. The question for me there is, what's the other side of that? Why are you doing this? Right? That's why I say it's always a two-sided thing.
Yeah.
Where, you're maybe fulfilling a rescue need of some sort, or I want to make you happy. Because if you're, I can fulfill and make you fulfilled, then maybe I will be. I think. And I'm not presuming any of your
No.
stuff,
I get it. I've been called
right
white knight syndrome, broken bird syndrome, and I mean, sure, we could relate it to a lot of things. One of them being, I mean, in general, I hate to see people sad and hurt and broken, and especially women. I think, I wasn't able to save my mom from a relationship because you can only give a person so much advice and stuff. I work in domestic violence, sexual trauma, human trafficking prevention awareness. A lot of these women chose to stay in those relationships. And yes, a lot of them were in financial bondage, emotional trauma bondage. They were all kinds of stuff. But some of them knew all this stuff and still said, "I'd rather be miserable with him and suffer the abuse than leave."
The devil.
And what I mean to say is, you need people to want to help themselves as much as you want to help them. Unfortunately, I think one thing too is I want to go back to something interesting tying into codependent relationships, into feeling physical symptoms, whether that's prickling, whether that's nausea, whether that's headaches, maybe sometimes it's weight gain, even there's different stuff. I actually had a woman on the show share about how the first time she was in a healthy relationship, because she had been unhealthy, it made her sick. Because she got like so overwhelmed by the unmet expectation of yelling or of abuse or stuff like it. And actually, I've seen women and men run away from a healthy relationship because it feels uncomfortable because they're so used to unhealthy, which is so crazy. But I think about if you drank soda your whole life, the first time you ever have water, you're going to be like, what is this? You're going to be in shock, right? Even though water is good for you and soda is not, especially nowadays. But you're so used to drinking the soda that if you have water, you're going to be like, I don't understand this feeling. It's,
what I was thinking as you were saying that was like, this is not normal. Like her thing, there's no yelling, there's no screaming, there's no drama.
Right.
This is not normal. Because that's what we learn is normal.
Right.
That whole goes back to the Brady Bunch, right? That's not realistic. Yelling and screaming is realistic.
Right. It's
what life is yelling and screaming. Is what I was told.
I'd have to presume, and I won't assume, but maybe your stepmom came from a household where her parents, like you mentioned, a toxic household. In fact, this blew my mind. Two things I'll share. I had a gentleman on my podcast. His dad would get so angry, he would rip all the furniture apart physically. He thought everyone's dad did that. He thought that was the standard. And he goes, I started drinking because there's a different gentleman. Well, my dad had a beer every day after work. I thought that's just what men do. I thought that was what it meant to be a man, to be a father, to have a job. Had a woman on my show. Her father never hugged her. One day she sees one of her girlfriends, their dad hugging. She's like, it's just some kind of romantic sexual thing between you and your father. What was that touching stuff? She goes, what do you mean? Just hugging me, dropping me off for school. You don't know? She's like, my father's never hugged me. That's weird. Is that normal? Like it's crazy what we think is, what we assume is normal, because when you're growing up, especially when you have limited or controlled exposure to the world like I did, because there's a lot of things I found out the hard way, like, oh, this isn't normal, or this is wrong too. Especially, growing up in a household that raised me to be racist and xenophobic, and I had this picture that every country outside of America was a war zone. Like it was just a destroyed war zone of poverty. And
me too, actually.
Yeah, right. And I've been traveling around Japan. I've been to parts of Mexico. I've traveled. I've interviewed people from these nations, and it's like, it's not at all what was painted as this, just. And I thought New Jersey was like all of America. New Jersey's not the greatest state of America. It's one of the worst states in America.
Well,
in my personal opinion, for taxes, crime, population, traffic, and all the good stuff, But I thought it was like all of America, like I had such a skewed perception, and then you get out into the world and you're like, whoa, this is different, Especially I've seen homes where people never met people of another race. Everything that you learn was, nowadays you have social media, but that too can be an echo chamber of this, 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 this.
Definitely.
Like I look at even Japan, living here temporarily, and there's so much glamorization of it online, and I live here and I've talked to people about real regular world issues going on here, that people are like, Japan is the future, it's living 50 years ahead of us. Well, there's some things going on here that are 50 years behind us,
Totally.
So it's with everything, it's getting real world exposure, which can be hard. And then it's just crazy to think that kind of stuff happens. And so for you, I know reading your book, you had trouble making friends. I haven't gotten into any romantic relationships yet, so I'd love to talk about that part. Did you embody some of that familial history into your relationships, the codependency? I'm assuming you were in codependent relationships too. You talked about, I did read about, the I'll never leave you, I'll always love you.
That was
those
my friend
kinds
who
of
passed
stuff.
away.
Yeah.
That was my friend who passed away, Lauren. She was more of a mother figure.
Mm.
And that again, the two-way thing is I felt badly because felt like I was stressing her. But at the
Mm,
same time, she was talking about her that I was the only person she could talk to about dying, and
mm,
she had stage 4 cancer. So I felt this heavy responsibility. I'm the only one she can talk to. I need to show
right.
up for her no matter what. Even when if I was in a bad space, she would be like, I can't deal with your problems because I've got my own,
Mm,
which she did. But at the same time, it was just we were both trying to give each other, we were just desperately trying to get what we couldn't get out of
mm,
that relationship. And her saying, like, I'll never go anywhere. I love you, whatever. It's like, we're just friends. Right. But I'm getting this like this mother figure vibe out of this. Why are you
mm,
saying this? And because we were behaving like that. It was just
mm.
a toxic relationship, like the one with my grandmother. But I will say, I want to go back a little bit to what you were saying about just a bit ago, New Jersey, and we went back.
Right.
What were you saying just before that
The
about?
woman had never been hugged by her father.
Oh, yeah,
The
yeah.
man,
Thank you,
yeah,
thank
that
you,
kind of
thank you.
stuff.
Yes, this is why everybody should buy my book. Okay, I'm not even.
Shameless
I
plug.
thought that was funny. Shameless plug.
Yeah.
Wounded Angels, but no, this is why everybody should do inner child work or some kind of healing work.
Hmm.
Okay, because for me, what it came down to is all these things you were saying we get taught.
Hmm.
All these my grandmother saying save every penny because we're going to be broke tomorrow, and
Right.
and my dad teaching me I should be drinking at age 10. I got all these different skewed values and
Mm,
ideas about what life is supposed to be and how I'm supposed to be. The inner child work started to teach me who I am,
mm,
what my integrity is,
mm.
what my values are. And they might not be the same as yours,
Right.
and that's okay. I mean, I don't have to force my values on you, but I need to know my own.
Hmm.
And for most of my life, and for a lot of addicted people, there's no concept of what is my integrity. I don't know, whatever it takes to get
Right.
the money to get high or whatever.
Mm.
And then like, we can figure out for ourselves, like, whether hugging is okay and these kinds of things. My
Right.
daughter's half Japanese.
Oh,
We go
okay.
through that actually. She'll give me a hug in private, but not in public because they don't touch in public.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? But she's like, I'm American, but we're not going to do it in public because, like, I respect that. But I think just the healing work is so core that so few people are able to do. And it's hard to get to
Mm.
the point where you can do that. Because, like, if you've got a lot of struggle
Right.
and a lot of pain, and you talked about PTSD, you talked about childhood issues,
Mm.
military issues, which I can't speak to from experience, but my
Yeah.
dad was military as well,
Oh, okay.
um, and Vietnam vet. And so,
Well, that
you know,
explains a lot as well.
it
You know,
might,
because
it might, yeah,
like I said, those aren't sole factors; they're additional factors on top of everything else you're dealing
exactly.
with.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And one thing I would say about that, just speculating, but I tend to think some people might be joining the military to get some distance
yeah,
from something,
yeah,
right? Just
we
like
see plenty of that.
I'm in Japan.
Right.
I put plenty of distance between me and where I came from,
Mm.
and I probably would have gone to the moon if I'd, had
But you can't run away from the child inside of you
can't.
who's
Yep,
injured.
can't.
You know?
You can't. But it makes sense that people do that. Traumatized people do that
Right.
because they're running away also from. I was running away from physical places and things
Yeah,
that were
100%.
and I can go back there now, but even now,
There's an
it's
association with it.
it's real. Is
Yeah.
what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like these things, these traumas, they don't go away. You can
Yeah.
make peace with yourself, but then you were talking about forgiveness,
Mhm.
right? Yes, and forgiveness with boundaries, that kind of thing. That's, I think, the ideal and maybe the hardest way to go.
Yeah.
But first you have to figure out yourself. First you have to, like, who am I? What's my health right now? Health is a big thing too. I don't know if I talk about it in the book specifically, but physical health, mental health,
Right.
spiritual health, and emotional health. I'm always checking in on that, right? I was at like a
Yeah.
0 10 years ago on
Mm.
all of them. You know, if you want to get healthy and you start to get a real sense of who I am, then you can have a healthy relationship. And you can even, and also talking about the broken bird, I never heard that before, but it makes a
Mm.
lot of sense. You can help people if you're okay,
Right.
if you're healthy. And I try to help people if I'm asked for help. I don't try to interfere,
Mm.
but I do try to help if I'm asked for help in a healthy, boundaried way that doesn't overwhelm me or take over my life. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's not like you can't help, or you have to be like, I'm only going to associate with healthy people
Right.
as if I am.
Mm.
Depends on the day,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm better than I used to be, and I can see those things. I can see that, the addiction, the trauma stuff, the codependency. I can see that so much, and it's such a struggle for people,
Mm.
and they just look like they're suffering with the painted smile on their face and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I love to help somebody like that if I can, if they're ready, just like you said,
Right.
if people are really ready. But if they're not, you could try you could try
Yeah.
all day long and it's not going to go anywhere.
But you should still try in the sense that sometimes people need their eyes open, right? And sometimes you're planting the seed of that occurring. So you
Sometimes,
might not be the person who's helping them, but you might be the person who sets them onto the right path, you
I
know?
think,
And I think
yeah.
everything we always say, do it with integrity, practicality, respect, appropriateness, you know?
Hmm.
One thing I'll mention too when it comes to feeling like you're not able to rescue someone, something that I'm sure you can relate to is I thought that if I won the lottery, you talked about winning the lottery,
Hmm.
you know, if I won the lottery or made enough money and I bought my parents this big house and retired them, that would fix their marriage. It would fix the way they treat their children. And you and I both know where we are in life now. That wasn't the issue. It was never the issue. It's not even that we had a bad house or anything. But I just thought I need to get them more. If they're not happy with what we have now, they need more.
Hmm.
The marriage had nothing to do with any of that. It had nothing to do with finances. It had nothing to do with property. It had nothing to do with physical geography or anything.
Right.
The marriage was just the toxic relationship that they had.
Yeah.
One of domestic violence, sexual violence, narcissism, manipulation, all that stuff. And they would have just done the same thing in a nicer house. Or
Right.
maybe
Right.
they would have had separate bedrooms and a private bowling alley to relax. Who knows? But
More money, more problems, I think.
right,
And
right, right.
if you're not in a good space otherwise, I think you can, improve your life and get more money and
Yes.
be better if you're better in other ways. But if things are toxic to begin with, it's
Right.
I look at all the movie stars that just go off the deep end.
Right. Many of whom commit suicide in the
Sure.
end as well.
Yep.
And so we've talked a lot about a lot of your healing journey, but let's do the
Hmm.
overall chronology. So you talked about leaving home at 14.
Yep.
Now you're in Japan in this sauna room in
Yeah.
recording with me.
Hmm.
From there to now, kind of major milestones because you're in Japan. I know reading your work, you mentioned Thailand at some point.
Yeah.
Where were
Yeah.
you born and raised? How did you end up here? Kind of just like a
Hmm.
30,000-foot overview.
Okay. Yeah, and you asked about romantic relationships too, which I
Hmm.
hadn't gotten into
Yeah.
much. There's not a lot to say in the past because I was married in 2001 until the end of 2024. So about 18
Very
months ago.
recently. Yeah.
In fact, my new inner child book, which is coming out in a few months,
Okay.
interestingly enough, it's called Inner Child Unleashed. I'm really not trying to pitch heavily, but Inner Child Unleashed begins with my divorce.
Okay.
It started chapter one. I got divorced today.
A divorce that
Yeah.
made it through years of addiction, it seems like the divorce came when you were healed. Oh, were
There
you
you
the
go.
initiator? Okay. Or
Interestingly
mutual?
not.
Oh, okay.
Well, okay, yeah. So a bit about that. So I married my ex-wife in 2001. We met even
Mm.
years before that. The marriage was kind of the convenience thing so I could stay in Japan. Because I first
Okay.
came, so I'll go do the whole history to start. Everything up until age 14 was not good. I left
Right.
home at 14. High school was better. I didn't get bullied in high school. I was just sort of a loner and I was playing
Mm.
drums. So I was joining drum corps, I was in marching bands and stuff like that. And things were kind of okay. College, I started drinking, and at first it helped me to be social. I
Mm.
had
Yeah.
girlfriends, I had
Yeah.
friends, if I drank, I could be funny, I could be whatever. And, that would only lasted a short time, maybe a year or two. And then that started overshadowing everything else. I looked for more drugs and all that kind of stuff. Ended up dropping out of high school and in a rehab at age 25. I had tried to kill myself.
Mm.
I tried to cut my wrists and was taken in by the police actually. And actually they drove me to jail for a night. And then I was in the rehab a couple days after that. 20 years before I had my last drug or drink.
Wow.
Interestingly enough, that didn't do
Yeah.
it. That starts to point to like alcoholic, drug addict, because like that's the kind of thing that would stop most people.
Right. Right. Turning point.
Then things kind of got more successful though. I went down to Florida
Mm.
where I had family and I was playing drums at Universal Studios and I
Oh,
had a
wow.
job at Disney World as well.
Huh.
And then from there, but things were starting to crash and burn real fast. I was making enemies left and right. I was getting
Mm.
into harder stuff as you can in America more than here.
Right.
And I was on the path to destruction and I took an audition for Tokyo Disneyland and
Ah,
I won
okay.
it. And so all of a sudden I'm flying business class over to Tokyo and like getting paid $1,000 a week to drum on trash cans.
What?
That's yeah, my dream
Right.
job, right?
Right.
It was
Right.
absolutely my dream job. And I didn't enjoy a day of it. I was bitter and
Mm.
resentful and just like, oh, it's raining. We shouldn't have to play the show. And I'm like, just like,
Mm.
be grateful, will you? Like, if I had a time
People's
machine,
dreams lie.
it was, oh,
Dreams
what a
lie. Yeah.
job, right? Played drums on trash cans for 10 minutes. We'll pay you money, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, I was getting sicker and sicker.
Right.
And so I lost all that. after about 10 years. I assaulted a Disney security guard. Not a good idea.
Right.
While I was intoxicated.
Mm.
Meanwhile, I got married and had a child in
Mm.
2004. None of that was stopping me. The day that my daughter was born, I said, I'll never do drugs or drink again. And that lasted like 12 hours. Sad to say.
Right.
I was powerless over that shit. I couldn't stop for her sake. That's what finally got me to quit.
Mm.
Why can't I stop for her sake?
Mm.
14 years later, I was still asking the same question because I love my
Mm.
daughters more than anything. So I was married at that point. 11 years of basically just a hermit. I was just like teaching English just to make enough money to buy alcohol, and shades were drawn kind of like this. I never went outside.
Wow.
No friends, and it was very pathetic and sad. I was 100 pounds heavier.
Mm.
And finally, actually, it was like flatline. You were talking about how things were exponential.
Right.
In that case, it crashed and burned and then just flatlined for 11 years. Just subsistence living. And it was really pathetic. I'd lost all my dreams. I did start writing at that time, though,
Right.
interestingly enough. So I started writing. I think I was trying to communicate, trying to recharge myself. And I'm almost done here. So when I finally quit the drinking and the drugs was 2018. And even by that point, my ex-wife had been saying, you're a loser, you're a shitbag. I need you to get out of my life. And I was like, no, I have to stay. I can't. What am I going to do? I can't go anywhere. I can't. No. It was extremely codependent, and she was not kind. But I mean, at that time, I was a train wreck, and she was running both our lives. I couldn't, she bought us a house. I wasn't even involved in looking for it because I was just too wrecked.
Wow.
And she was trying to get on with her life, which makes sense. But then I started to heal. And as I started to heal, it seemed like she was getting more embittered, and she was like, you need to get the hell out. I'm sick of you. We need a divorce. And I have to add the fact that I also came out at that time. I'm gay. And so I came out in 2017.
Okay.
Humiliated her. I came out on Facebook. This was all the wrong way. I don't regret that I came out, but I do regret the way I handled it.
Right.
So that was, get out, she was humiliated. She hated me. But that's what made me realize that the alcohol was the biggest problem too, because people were being supportive. People were saying, oh, that must be a weight off your shoulder. You must feel better, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, no, I don't feel better. I feel worse. And then 2 days later is when I started to try to quit. I didn't manage to quit for like another year. And then, so all that, my daughter was involved in that too. And she was highly affected by all of that shit. What are my teachers going to say? What are my friends going to say? And all that kind of stuff. She and I, as I said, we have a great relationship now. We've made peace with, she's very accepting of me. I'm very accepting of her. And all that time, my ex-wife was saying, get out, I want you out. And then I finally said, okay, I agree with you. And then she said, no, we can't divorce yet. I want to wait until our daughter finishes high school. That was 3 years later. By the way, the relationship was completely over, separate rooms, all that stuff. There was no marriage anymore.
Right.
We need to wait. Okay. So, and being codependent and feeling like this is easy, I just stayed, and I still hadn't addressed the codependency. And so I said, okay, great. Well, we can wait. And then my daughter finished high school, and she said, oh, no, we have to wait until she turns 20. And I was like, well, I thought you said high school, but even at the same time, I was still like, oh, it's a place to live. We own this house. I don't have to move on. And finally, in the end, in 2024, I was calling for the divorce. I'm saying, we need to move on. I need to move on. I need to get out of the house. And she kept on putting it off. And I didn't understand why. Because after all that time, she's like, I hate you. I want you out of my life. But suddenly it flipped, right? Because it was a trauma bond. It wasn't a loving relationship. It never, I care about her as a human being deeply. She's the mother of my child. And there's a happy ending to this story too, relatively. We finally did divorce at the end of 2024. That's when I went traveling. And last year I was just on the road and writing and all that stuff. And I was writing that book, the Inner Child book. And it started chapter 1. I got divorced. Last month, I met with her and my daughter for the first time. And we had a really lovely afternoon. We had coffee together. We went to her father's grave because he
Mm.
had passed away last year. Both our fathers passed away last year.
Okay. Yeah.
She wanted to see me. And she was, when I came back to Japan, she was starting to kind of want to caretake again. Like she was giving my daughter orders about make sure your father signs up at City Hall and renews his license and all this stuff.
Right.
My daughter's coming to me saying, Mom's doing all this stuff. And I'm like, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I'm an adult. I can do my,
Right.
I can do everything. So she's still got something going on there
Mm.
where she's like, bonded. But as I said, I do care about her very deeply, and I don't want her to be in pain. I want her to have a wonderful, beautiful life. And so that healing moment we had, that was the end of the book.
Mm.
I was like, okay, that's the last chapter.
Wow.
Yeah. It was the long story short.
And how did you even meet her? Because inter is she Japanese or
We worked
Japanese
at Disney
American?
together.
But I'm saying is she
She's
Japanese?
Japanese.
Right. So intercultural relationships here in Japan.
Yeah.
How did you manage that, especially in the state that you were in? Like, how did you achieve that? And what I mean to say, I guess for anyone listening, it's not the easiest thing to do here. It's not the most accepted thing,
No.
number one. And it's just a very different culture. The dating culture, the courtship culture is very different for any American man, let alone one who's dealing with so much stuff. So how did that kind of unfold?
Sure.
And that's not to diminish you saying like you can't get a woman or anything,
Oh,
but
no. I get no.
there's a lot of barriers
Yeah.
to it in
No,
that particular
absolutely. Well,
situation.
to be honest with you, now I was back at that time, and that was at that time too. And I don't feel that I was deceptive to her in the sense that I
Mm.
told her I was attracted to men and women. And I was thinking about coming out even back then. But the societal pressure was more like, hey, go date some girls or whatever. And I was like, yeah, okay, I should, because I don't want to be anything besides normal. And I met her and I did love her. The thing is, and so I was kind of dating when I first got to Japan.
Right.
There was a lot of pressure of that. Like, we're making all this money, get some girls, let's go.
Right,
Go
right.
party. And it actually isn't that hard to date Japanese girls. But when you start to get in the relationship with them, that's when the complications
Right.
happen. She was kind of international. She had American friends. She spoke
Oh,
English
okay.
really
So it
well.
makes it easier.
That's part of
Yeah.
it. She worked at Disney, which is an American company. So a lot of the
Right.
people you see working at Disney here are Americanish.
Right. Okay.
Same as TGI Fridays too, bar and grills and stuff. They're all like, yeah, hey, we're in the cowboy hat like you,
Yeah.
I speak English, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. The Hard Rock Cafe here too. That's another spot.
Totally.
Very
Yeah.
Americanized.
So that's how that started. And again, I think we were just two broken people who met each other and were trying to, just find something. But she had major issues with her dad too.
Okay.
Both of us did. And like, I'll tell you what, this is the truth. And I don't want to generalize, but if a Japanese girl really wants to upset her dad, she can bring home a foreigner.
Yes. Yeah. I've heard that.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. I think, that's just like,
Yeah.
how
Well,
you
and
feel now, Dad?
that's not even just a Japanese American thing, but in America, a lot of women will pursue, or even men too, will pursue a partner that will displease their parents if they're having some kind of rebellion relationship with their parents.
Sure.
Anything to piss them off. In fact, my one buddy got screwed because the girl he liked, her parents, this was, I guess, high school, he liked this girl in his grade. He really liked her, but because her parents approved of him so much and said, "Oh, he's such a great guy,"
Right.
she went and found the opposite of him and
Oh.
said, "Like, you would be great, but you would make my parents too happy." And that's so
Oh
sad
my God. Yeah, it
to
is. It really is.
to dictate our romantic lives based off how our parents feel, or whether they approve, disapprove, this or that. It should be about, you talked about, who am I? What do I want? What are my values?
Yeah.
Right. That's so important that our relationship life is dictated by that.
Okay.
But oftentimes, like, my life's a great example of all my career choices were my parents. They wanted me to do this, that. When I was 17, they said, "You're going in the military," brought me to office, signed the paperwork,
Oh wow.
even my romantic life, like my whole life, my father always put pressure on me to get, to have a Japanese wife, which is why I chose to go to Japan in the first place, because my father had always said, "There's only one thing you can do to make me proud, son. It's not serve on a submarine. It's not be an author. It's not doing any of this. It's to have a Japanese wife."
Really?
And
Why?
his reasoning for it was different than mine. He and I have very different views on Asian women and women in general. He has very misogynistic views, very sexualized views, very bad views. For me, when it came to Asian women in particular, because there's so much sexualization, fetishization, misogyny online.
Sure.
For me, it was, the way I saw it was, Japan was a more traditional company in America that was really changing in its values and stuff. And because of my experience with American women, not all of them, of course, but a lot of them, there was a sense of entitlement and of not wanting a traditional style household of mom, dad, kids, classic structure where there was in other countries. Ultimately, that's not why I went. It was just an add-on to the fact that for me, Japan was right when I had gotten into learning about international culture, exploring and stuff, and it
Mhm.
presented itself as an opportunity to leave America, which I felt like was important to me. Because leaving New Jersey and just going to South Carolina, Georgia had
Yeah.
already expanded my mind so much. How much more so if I went to another country?
Mhm.
And the other opportunities at the time was to go to Washington in America
Okay.
or Japan
Oh, wow.
or maybe San Diego. And I said, well,
Mhm.
Japan was the only international option at
Right.
that time. And so I said, I'll go there. And I had already gotten into a relationship at that time. So it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to go get a Japanese wife.
Oh, she
But
was in Japan and
no, 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 no.
you
So
met her
I
there. Oh,
had
okay.
an American thing going
Oh,
on at
okay.
that time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even like a motivation anymore.
Oh, I see.
But
Okay.
what I'm saying is it's interesting that parents will put certain dating pressures on you.
Yeah.
Plenty of families that say, don't date a black guy or don't date a white girl, don't date this or that, or these people are more like this way, right? There's a lot of that dictating
Yeah.
our lives.
It is so, parents are so outsized in our life. I swear to God.
Mm,
Now, my dad, um, he said to me one time, because I was dating some girls and brought them home, and he said, "Oh, you kind of like them on the heavy side, huh?" Because they were bigger. And it's interesting because my stepmom was too. She's actually a compulsive overeater, I believe.
mm,
She would say she's not, but I believe she is. But he says, well, she was skinny when I met her,
mm,
and so my ex-wife is very thin.
mm.
I processed that. My dad
Well,
said he disapproves of the
my,
type
my
of
dad's the
girl that
same
I.
way.
Yeah,
He specifically had unrealistic expectations for women because a lot of women he was with were had eating disorders of anorexia and
okay,
were drug addicts, so they were extremely thin,
sure,
especially the level of drugs that they did. And I remember I had a girlfriend who was a little bit chubbier, and she also liked baggy clothing.
mm,
She was very self-conscious. She liked really baggy clothes.
sure.
So I had picked up like a large or an XL hoodie to buy her one time. My dad was like, "Holy smokes, how big is that chick you're dating? Look at the size of that
Oh
thing."
man,
But
yeah,
it's just like so I laugh when you say that because
mm,
it was the same thing.
yeah,
Or my father really judges this one woman. And I think he means it in light spirit sometimes, but sometimes I think people did judge. My one ex had a lot of mental health issues, hospitalized multiple times, self harm, suicidal ideation.
mm-hmm,
They kept changing her medications on her, and it did affect her personality a lot.
mm,
Constantly changing, especially a teenage girl's medication. I think it can be very harmful. She had therapy rats. And a lot of people haven't heard of that. It's not very traditional, but her rats were her therapy animals. So now,
oh
people have like
okay,
therapy dogs, therapy cats. She had rats,
okay,
like, the animal rats.
yeah,
And I think my dad has always made a point to point that out. And so have other people that know about her. And for me, it's like they really harped on it so much and judged her so much for it. And it didn't matter. Or I've even been judged for being with women who didn't wear a lot of makeup and had acne showing. And it's like,
mm-hmm,
well,
right,
a weight is a huge one that we see, especially with social media. I
sure,
mean, there's plenty of movements in the opposite direction, but
mm,
it's just this actual extreme spectrum, in my opinion, where social media you have glamorization
yeah,
and over idolization of being heavy, and then
or
same
that's
with skinny. It's
yeah,
just like two ends of the spectrum. It's
totally,
pushing either overindulging, binge eating,
mm,
and saying not that you can be fat and beautiful, but that fat is beautiful. There's a very key difference between those phrases. And I think it's
mm,
important to say you can be heavy set and still beautiful and confident,
mm-hmm,
but saying it is beautiful, therefore pursue that and try to eat as much as you can.
right,
That's an unhealthy mindset.
sure,
Saying, a certain level of thinness is beautiful rather than you can be thin and beautiful pushes people towards photoshopping, right? We see
sure,
photoshopping filters and anorexia,
sure,
unfortunately.
yep,
Or nowadays, people are getting so many plastic surgeries
mm-hmm,
because we've put so much beauty and value in sexual
okay,
organs that
yeah,
people are getting. I mean, I've seen some, how do I say this politely, inhumane
mm-hmm,
surgeries. Like
okay,
people are questioning a doctor for giving a woman a surgery like that. People
mm-hmm,
removing their ribs to look more like a Barbie doll.
right, right.
People getting, hips that are 5 feet across and their waist is 5 inches across. I mean, I've seen some
Right.
things out there that just, you
Well, I
know,
think, yeah, aim for healthy.
Healthy,
It's
healthy. Yes,
you know, I mean, in the
it's a
judgment,
balance. Yeah.
we all judge. I judge. I try not to.
Right.
On a good day, I'm not very judgmental at all.
Hmm.
On a bad day, you know, I've got, you know, this friend or that friend and I poke fun or whatever. And then it's like,
Right.
I probably shouldn't, definitely shouldn't, you know, but judging for me, it's funny. It's like one reason I didn't want to go
Yeah.
online and I didn't want to be doing podcasts and showing my face.
Right.
I've got this damage on my nose from drinking, right? So
Mm.
I was in the sun, so it's red today, but you know, there's spider veins and stuff.
Hmm.
And I used to be incredibly self-conscious about that. Like I
Mm.
wouldn't want to show my face. And that's one of those things. It's like somebody's gonna, you know, and I've had people say that, like especially on the internet,
Mm.
oh, yeah, nice nose, asshole, or whatever. It's like,
Right.
why should I care? But you know, and I
Right.
think women too. I think women especially have an even higher pressure of like, because
Yeah.
like a guy can be okay in different ways,
Mm.
like you know, and whatever, a big heavy gross looking CEO does fine. Do you know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
Like,
Right.
well, he's a real
Or
winner,
there's
you
less
know.
pressure on our physical
Physical,
appearance
exactly. There's different
compared to
ways to do it,
women.
right?
But
Whereas women are kind of you know,
yeah.
exactly, yeah.
And it's actually, in my personal experience, I've been more judged on appearance by men than women. Not romantically, but like I was bullied by boys growing up because of my freckles.
Oh yeah.
Women love the freckles, not all of them, but a lot of them say, "Oh, we love her freckles,"
Hmm.
or stuff like that. There was boys who made fun of me in seventh and eighth grade for having them.
Huh.
In fact, I remember there was this guy who was making fun of me for having freckles. Why is your face covered with freckles? And I said, I don't know. Why is your face covered with acne? And he started crying. He's like, that's not cool, man. I can't control that. That's not cool to make fun of something someone can't
But you
control. And I was
can,
like, did you think I painted
right?
these on?
Right.
This
It's
this was
crazy.
before the Snapchat filters. Now everyone does fake freckles. These are all real. I didn't paint these on my way here.
Right.
And then also just, and well, women did this as well, but especially men determining my masculinity based off of my weight. I was only
Hmm.
120 pounds,
Sure.
soaking wet,
Right.
as they
Right.
say,
Yeah.
all of high school,
Hmm.
and people was always like, you're not a real man. Or, I was a gold medalist in cross country, first one to get a varsity jacket
Wow.
instantly
Hmm.
freshman year. And it was, that's a fake sport. That's not a real sport. You're not a real man. That's not real athleticism. You're just running in a straight line. Anyone can do that.
Right.
You know,
Right.
try getting tackled or beat and stuff. And so all these perceptions, like you're saying, and what we're getting at to wrap that up is there's so much pressure from society, social media, and our parents. And it's really hard for us to navigate choosing what we want, unfortunately. And I think a lot of us are figuring it out way later in life than we want, whether that's 55 years, right? Or
Yeah.
their 20s or whatever it
But
is.
better late than never. I mean,
Right.
that's,
And
you know,
that and that's
for
important.
me, it all started when I was 47, and a lot of it was watching younger people who felt more comfortable with themselves and thinking, oh,
Mm.
I missed the boat, because I was very fearful as a kid, as I said, bullied and that kind of thing,
Right.
afraid of being assaulted. Didn't need to be any more abnormal than I already was.
Right.
So I just really went inward and started just like controlling my every action and my every word. And then I kind of started to shut up.
Mm.
Then, you know, substances brought that back out. Speaking of the internet thing, right? I
Right.
was the troll too. I trolled when I was unwell and drinking.
Mm.
Oh, I'm gonna, you tell this idiot what he think, you know,
What do they call it? Keyboard warrior.
keyboard warrior. Oh my God,
Right.
totally, totally. And it's, you know what? I was miserable and unwell. And, you know,
Yeah.
judging that guy or saying, you know, you're full of shit. And I used to go after religious people a lot.
Mm.
So I'd be like, you know, religion's a bunch of bullshit. You know, it's like
Mm.
the Mormons, they're so, you know, they're so whatever, hypocritical or whatever, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
and all that kind of thing. And there was a lot of resentments that went back to growing up Catholic. I also went to Catholic
Okay.
school.
Yeah.
The whole mother suicided means she's in hell thing
Mm.
was a big thing in my mind. You know, nobody ever really said that to me, but you know, that sort of got in, you know, this impression, well, the Catholic Church is a bad thing,
Right.
you know, and by and large, I think I try to be open minded about everything these days. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I mean, I might not agree with people, and there's some people that have views that are so extreme from my views that it's
Right.
like, well,
Right.
let's just be pleasant. And
Right.
we're not going to have a deep conversation that's going to go
Mm.
anywhere because we're not going to agree, and we're not going to even find any
Yeah.
kind of a, what do you call it, like a
Even grounds or
even
yeah.
ground. So you know, that's
Agree
not
to
really worth
disagree.
loving.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you could, you know, maybe if somebody likes music and we talk about music, there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that in trauma recovery and
Mm.
recovery in general too,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Music
it's
is
like,
very powerful.
oh, not just music, but any having that as a common bond,
Right.
addiction or trauma, even if you're
Well,
very
and,
different
and
in
that's
other
the
ways.
thing.
Yeah.
You can find
Mm-hmm.
things that you all bond together with, or you can focus on finding what separates you all. And that's the
Totally.
thing. You
Yeah.
can always find something that
Yeah.
you two agree with or disagree with. That's with
Mm-hmm.
any person, whether it's politics, faith, music, whatever it is, you
Mhm.
know. And I had a woman on the show make a great analogy. It's two people meet on a bridge and they agree politically, they agree religiously, they like the same music, but they disagreed about their favorite color. So one of them throws them off the
Oh
bridge,
God,
right? You know, or
that's
something.
yeah,
I'm butchering
yeah,
that, but
yeah.
basically, right? You can always find something to the smallest detail that you disagree about.
Sure.
It's about where do you put your time, energy, and focus on.
Yeah.
Now, I want to go back to you mentioned the fiction books,
Okay.
and you've got a couple of them out,
Yep.
and you know that was a little while ago before your writer's block, and now Wounded Angels, right?
Hmm.
And you talked about writing it as a way of trying to express yourself, understand your emotions, work through some stuff. And one thing I will mention that resonated so deeply with me, anyone listening, if you're an author, you will totally understand this. Or even as a podcaster or artist, I look back at the first podcast I did that I guested on to now. I'm like,
Hmm.
man, if I was as mature as I am now, articulated as I am now, same with writing. I look at stuff I wrote years ago and I
Hmm.
read it. I'm like, man, the you talked about writers' immaturity, so to speak, or
Yep.
your level as an author.
Sure.
Really resonate with that. And I think a lot of people can. And we all wish, man, I wish I could redo that now, or I wish I had been at this level when I wrote it. So you mentioned in your book, Wounded Angels, you talked a little bit about reading back your books and you're like, you know, that level. But you said something key for where I was at the time or for what I wrote and was feeling at that time. These are the books that needed to be.
Yeah.
So I really resonated with that. And I'd love
Hmm.
to hear more about these fictional books.
Sure. Thank you. I have two phases at this point, obviously. It's
Mm,
like I wrote the first four sci-fi books when I was still drinking, still in a toxic relationship, still none of the good stuff had happened in, except my daughter was born. But I was writing
right.
these books to try to survive, to try to find a way to make money or do something, and I'm like, okay, I'll try writing because I don't have to interact with anybody. I don't have to be personable. I don't, because all that was out the window, and so I wrote the four books and they're still published. I'm proud of them, even though they're not my best work at this point. But I actually went back and did a second edition on two of them. The second
Mm,
book, The Gold Club, and the third book, which is Dark Alignment,
mm,
apocalyptic book. It's really cool about, gravity suddenly changes and everybody starts to fall apart.
mm.
I love that concept, right? And
Right,
it's the
right.
book. And funny thing is, that's the bestseller right now. It's my
Mm,
third book because for whatever reason, it's getting a little bit of attention. And I did the second edition and I'm prouder of it now.
right,
And I would maybe go back and fix up some other stuff too at some point. But I kept them on the shelf. I'm like, this is my history. This is where I was at.
right,
This is the start of the
right.
writer. When I came back, the nonfiction's a little different. I read and I'm doing the audiobook
Mm.
for Wounded Angels now. I'm doing it myself.
You should have just recorded when
And
you were doing the talk to text. You would have already had it.
I know,
Right?
right? Right.
If you didn't think about
Yeah,
that.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. Next time
Right,
for the
right.
third book, because the second book's already written too.
Mm,
But as I'm reading it, I'm like, yeah, it's still right. And I'm fixing up a few things that are a bit confusing. The second edition will be
mm,
clearer. But for the most part, it's like, I know the plot.
mm.
It's what I did. It's
Right,
my life. Yeah, I can't
right.
screw up the plot. Right. It's like, and as you said, it's basically just like talking about the process and whatever happened that day is what I wrote. So I feel less nervous about that or thinking it should be better, should be
Mm,
better. Like you were talking about that.
right.
Now, the fiction, though, I did publish my first fiction book, The Solarian Deep, and that's after the big writer's block, after the healing and
Mm,
sort of the new phase. And it's different. It's a lot different. I think the characters have a lot more depth.
mm.
It's still, my best work is still on my computer because I'm writing a book
Okay.
right now
Yeah.
that's I'm very proud of, and I'm not going to publish it till it's ready. And
Right.
I love the concept. It's another sci-fi, and it's
Oh, okay.
going to be good. But again, I'm putting out where I'm at now, and Solarian
Right.
Deep is kind of a bridge book or
In
transition and that
between.
kind of
Yeah.
thing. And so yeah, but man, it's the thing is I'm trying to figure out how to market myself. Like my website, like
Hmm.
the common wisdom was like get a pen name, separate the nonfiction, have two websites, all this. I can't do that. I mean, this is
Mm,
me, and I spent decades hiding myself from the
right.
world, and now I'm coming out. I want you to see what I'm all about
Mm,
as a writer. I want you to, hear me, and I want to know how we connect on this stuff, including the fiction. Right. So to
mm,
me, it's like
yeah.
past, present, future. Past, I'll
Mm,
talk about the trauma and the healing. Future, I'll talk about the sci-fi. And then on
right.
Substack, I'm just writing bullshit about what's going on these days. It's like
Okay.
I wrote a lot about the travels last year
Mm,
because I just sort of did a big Odyssey travel thing. And actually, weirdly enough, I am still supposed to be on the road.
mm.
I don't belong in Japan.
Ah,
There
okay.
was a crazy quirk of the universe that has me here.
Mm.
Want to hear it?
Yeah, we can unpack it for sure.
The inner child hit me over the head.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now to go back. I was in Japan for 90 days.
Mm.
That was from, wait,
It's a no
March.
visa, show up for 90 days and leave and then come
Exactly.
back.
Well, the thing is, I have a permanent visa,
Oh, okay.
but I had left as a resident.
Mm.
So I wasn't paying taxes and I wasn't on the social insurance or anything like that.
Okay.
So I could come back for as much as 90 days
Mm.
without reestablishing residency.
Ah,
Okay.
okay, I
So I
understand.
came
Yeah.
back in March.
Playing the system.
Basically, yeah,
Yeah,
legally,
yeah,
legally. But
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I was like, I could do that up to twice. Come back for 90 days, see my daughter, and then I had a ticket to go to the Philippines on
Mm.
June 1st.
Been a lot of typhoons and tropical storms
There
and
was a huge
earthquakes.
earthquake like a week
Yep.
later. Now here's the thing.
Yeah.
May 31st, in the middle of the night, and I didn't want to. Here's the thing: is I didn't want to leave,
Mm.
and the inner child was like, "Can't we just stay, please? I want to stay." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah. If you really want to stay, we'll stay." But I was lying to the inner child because
Mm.
I was really just, no, we got a ticket, man. We're not staying.
Mm.
We'll come back. We have to. We have a ticket. We have a plan.
Right.
I'm supposed to be in the Philippines. I even
Right.
had drumming work. Actually, the stuff I was doing in Indonesia, the drum
Right,
playing,
right.
they were setting something up for me in the Philippines for like this month. And in the middle of the night, I got terrible stomach pain, followed by horrible nausea.
Mm.
And then I don't remember much. I got wicked vertigo and I fell and I hit my head on the hardwood floor. And I got a concussion. I took the ambulance ride,
Mm.
ended up in the hospital. My apartment mate, who it's his place, he rode
Right.
with me, really cool dude, Jason, good friend of mine. And in the ambulance, I was like, man, if I decide to stay, I can stay in the place. And he's like, yeah, sure. I'm like, I ain't leaving. And so I ended up getting my money back for the ticket. That's a
Nice.
crazy,
Nice.
like
Yeah.
crazy quirk of
Here's
fate,
the
right?
hospital
It's
receipt.
literally
Yeah.
like, no, no, not even that. Is they
Really?
changed the flight time, so I was
Huh.
entitled to a refund.
Wow.
Yeah. So
See everything. Yeah.
everything worked out almost as though it was like I was being guided into this. You should be in Japan
Right.
right now. Right, probably
Right.
to do this podcast.
Right. Now we're here.
It's all right
I know.
downtown,
I'm
right?
sweating so
My
bad.
first live podcast, right?
Yeah.
But man, it's like, and I'm happy to be here. But it's
Thank
like,
you.
holy crap, how did that happen?
Right.
And I really wanted it, but I was like, I really can't. I can't afford it.
Mhm.
The reason I went to Southeast Asia was to keep costs low and
Right.
all the
Right. Of
things.
course.
And no, just my travels ended, and I'm staying at least through the end of this year. And I think I'm probably going to stay. I'm very comfortable in Japan.
Mm.
Japan feels very safe and grounded for me. My daughter's here, my friends
Right.
are here,
Right.
and so I think the big travel odyssey is, at least for now.
So now I have to ask, in addition to the writing and to
Mhm.
traveling Japan,
Yep.
you gonna start drumming again around Japan, or what's the deal with that?
I've looked into it. I'm focused on building my publishing business first and foremost, and that's my
Yeah.
passion now.
Yeah.
I love drumming, and I was doing a whole bunch of stuff last year with Indonesia. I did a whole tour. They took me all around the country. I went to Sumatra, went to Bali, I went to Jakarta, and it was awesome. I got the Instagram. It's all over my Instagram. You can see the videos
Okay.
with these kids. I was teaching the kids. They were taking pictures. They're so nice people. And I had a great time. And a drumstick company made me their brand ambassador.
Oh
which I
wow.
still am
Yeah.
to this day. But for some reason, Japan does not embrace me the way that Indonesia did. And
Mm.
I think it has to do with they have an impression here
Mm.
that if you're to be taken seriously, you need to come from outside Japan.
Mm.
Like they bring experts in from California or from New York. They fly them in, they
Right.
wine and dine them for 3 weeks. They have them teach the kids and they send them back. And I'm like, hey, I'm living here just outside Tokyo. Do you want me to come? Oh, no, we don't need you. It's just weird.
Gaijin and gone.
I am, but I am, okay, so not to be egotistical, but I'm
Mm.
one of the best in the business. I'm a world-class marching drum expert. I played at Tokyo Disneyland. I was in a group called the Blue Devils, which is the best marching group in the world,
Mhm.
like 20-time world champion. I had some of the best teachers in the world, and I can play. I can play with the best of them. So, and I love doing that. Get up on stage, have some fun. I don't have stage fright anymore, ever. It's just I have a blast. But it's not the same calling that it was. I think the calling for me now is the writing. So I'm thinking, and I did do some reaches, and if Japan says, hey, come do this thing, I'll do it.
Right.
I'll definitely do it.
Right.
And again, I was supposed to be doing some stuff in the Philippines, so that kind of fell through, which kind of bums me out a little bit, but
Right.
it is what it is. I told them I'm happy to come if they could get me a flight. So it's like that was maybe a bridge too far because they thought I was going to be in town. So
Right.
you know.
Right.
But no, I mean, I'm making peace with, like, I used to think I have to be a drummer or a sci-fi writer or a memoirist or a psychology, whatever, healing
Right, right,
guy
right.
or an influence, all this crap. Can't stand it. My website's daviddeanehaskell.com. All of it's on there. Everything I
Right.
do. If you want to see the drums, there it is. If you want to see the writing, there it is. And it's not really
You're
working for
just
me yet.
being you.
Not
Yeah.
really working for me. Got to
Yeah.
be honest, it's not really working
Mm.
because you got to in the internet with the algorithms and all that crap. You have to
Yeah.
have this kind of focus. So I'm just kind of allowing it to suck right now.
Everyone wants me to niche down and I refuse.
Okay.
I am all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
My website is all these different things. My
Okay.
social medias. I don't do what I do to be a brand or to be a business.
Mm-hmm.
I do it because it's what I do,
Right.
So I'm in the same boat
You
as
and me
you,
both. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
I think
So no niching down.
yeah, in the long term,
Mm-hmm.
it'll work out, but that
Mm-hmm.
initial breakthrough can be more difficult. So,
Yeah. Well, we'll
yeah,
see. Things are starting to pick up a little bit since I started doing the podcasts, actually.
you're
And
welcome.
yeah,
I'm
thank
just
no,
kidding.
thank you.
Yeah.
To do
Um,
more live ones, we got to get
Yeah,
everybody to come
yeah.
here to
I'm
Japan.
trying. I'm
Mm.
trying. Everyone's always busy. Everyone's like, you don't understand. I sleep at my office overnight. Japan works me to death. And I'm like, okay, I'll come to the office to do the interview if you want, you know. But it is great to have this connection and it speaks to so much. And one thing I've been focusing on lately is global unity. We're all
Mhm.
human beings. We all have the same problems. Everyone in every country listening has gone through something that we mentioned,
Oh God, yeah.
it doesn't matter. And in fact, in other countries, sometimes those parental pressures are even more strict than in America.
Hmm.
And so I think it's very relatable. So on that note, we've kind of talked a little bit about the future. You've got more stuff coming out. So maybe I'll have
Hmm.
to come back to Japan to interview you again. Or I'll meet you in the Philippines. I'll meet you in the
All right.
Philippines for that interview. But I'm trying to go next year. So
Okay.
and then I've gotten invited to also Malaysia and Thailand and Ireland, all these places. So I'm like,
Hmm.
well, next trip I'm doing, maybe we'll just listen. It's a long flight there. If I'm in the area, I'm going to all those places. We're gonna not going
Well,
back and
if
forth,
you
back and
you
forth, back and
talked about
forth.
drinking socially, if you drink
Yeah.
socially, you can have a blast in Thailand. I'll tell you that. That's one thing. So I didn't partake, but it was fun to watch everybody else have a party.
Right.
It's just Thailand is just a party, man. Just get a moped and go.
That's something we
Yeah.
should talk about. I was just about to
Okay.
wrap us up, but I'm
All
gonna take a
right.
step back.
Okay.
Relapse,
Mm.
temptation, staying sober.
Hmm.
Let's talk about that because that's really
Okay.
important
Sure.
because we've almost made it seem like it's a one and done. You woke
Right.
up one day, you're
It
like, I'm
wasn't.
done.
Wasn't.
And it
No.
wasn't. And is it currently a struggle?
A little bit.
Some days more than
Some
others.
days more than others. Codependency is more of a struggle than substance use
Mm,
for me most days, but I wouldn't say no. So last year was tough for me, and I'll be honest because my big problem has always been alcohol,
mm.
and I used to smoke pot, and I never really had much of a problem, or at least I told myself I didn't.
Right.
It's going to Thailand; it's everywhere. It's legal there.
Mm.
So like,
I would say Japan, I haven't smelt it once. America, nowadays, it's hard not to
I
smell it
know,
on
yeah, you
every
notice
street.
that in
It's
America a
bad.
lot. I noticed that in America a lot. In
There's also
Japan,
no tree allergies here. I breathe so easy.
dude,
No pot, no tree allergies. It's so
Japan,
nice.
Japan, they tossed Paul McCartney in the slammer in Japan, man.
Mm.
You know that story?
No, no,
Oh
no,
yeah,
I
no,
don't
they
think
caught
so.
him with some weed. They tossed him in the slammer for a
Wow.
couple of weeks and then deported him. He couldn't come back to Japan for like 20 years.
Wow.
They do not mess around here. That's
Well,
I
listen,
to all listeners coming to Japan.
be
If you
respectful. Be very
don't
respectful.
carry the shit across the border is what I was gonna
Oh,
say.
yeah, yeah.
Like don't yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, you don't see that much in Japan. Although I did do it. I found it from time to time
Right.
and could have got and that was one thing that my ex-wife said to me. She never told me not to drink. She never said you need to quit or I'm leaving or
Mhm.
anything like that, but she did say please do not do that any more drugs that you will ruin us, you will ruin the whole
Right.
family. So
Yeah.
Japan's very hardcore about that shit. But yeah, Thailand was a bit tempting as far as that. But then as I kind of had to call a friend and I have some
Accountability set up.
well, not even just that, it's just people I trust to tell what's going on. I have a small circle of friends and I don't tell everybody everything, but find some people that you trust is my advice.
Right.
And I'm not even saying tell me don't talk me out of it. And just
Hmm.
this is where I'm at. I
Mm.
just want to avoid there's a
Right.
lot of secretive nature to
Hmm.
addiction, any kind of addiction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
giving that
100%.
stuff the light of day is a big thing for me. And I think for a lot of people. But I did joke about that I relapsed twice. The first one, I relapsed for 20 years. The second one, I relapsed for 2 weeks.
Mm.
And that was, I'll tell you, that was in 28. And then my last drink was somewhere around September 11th, 2018.
Mm.
Very memorable.
Right.
Like I can't say that I didn't do. I was doing drugs too, so I can't say that on September 10th I was sober.
Mm,
I might or might not have been. That's how
mm,
hardcore the relapse was.
mm,
But I do guarantee I didn't have anything in me in September 11th, so that's my date
mm.
of like my finish date.
Right.
But man, I was just trying to kill myself. I was just despondent. I had quit for almost a year,
Right.
but hadn't found any kind of spiritual healing, hadn't found any kind of relief. Still wasn't doing any of that kind of inner work that
Mm,
needs to be done. And so I relapsed and it was just ugly. It was just not good. I was trying to get up the courage to jump in front of a train
mm,
that whole 2 weeks. And I thought I would, if you asked me, I would have said 6 or 7 weeks.
mm.
But I found a journal. I actually found a journal
Oh
and
wow.
I wrote, I'm drinking again. I've got enough drugs to last a lifetime. And then I went radio silence. The journal stopped.
Wow.
And 2 weeks later, the drugs were all gone.
Wow.
And that I knew that date. So it was like, wow, 14 days. So relapse is real. And I did relapse once, thankfully only once, but I think I was on, again, I was on track to do another one. And people get in this
Right.
really nasty cycle. And it could have easily happened to me, but I managed to hang on long enough to find what God means to me, to find what healing means to me, to find, and also start to
Right.
address the codependency because I hadn't even looked at that because I had to get off the substances first. And then, the codependency was killing me just as much as drugs and alcohol ever were. Because, like, if you disapproved of me, then I might as well die. I
Mm,
might as well go do drugs and, because I'm no good if you don't approve of me. That's where I was at for a while.
mm,
And so, yeah, don't give up. If you're out there struggling, my advice is don't give up, because some people do relapse, some people don't.
mm.
Addiction is a monster. But yeah, I'm pretty safe today. I'm pretty okay today.
Okay.
And I'm pretty happy with the way things are going. I wouldn't really want to ruin it.
Right.
And for me, it would ruin it. If I could drink socially, I might,
Right.
but I know I can't. I know myself.
Well, and that's
Like, you
important.
give me
And
one
that's
drink, I'll
vital.
have 20
Mm,
guaranteed, same day. I wouldn't
mm.
even like work my way up.
100%. And I
Yeah.
think knowing that is so important. So
Mm-hmm.
what I want our final message to be is we talked about the wounded angels.
Yep.
We talked about the inner children. We've talked about different forms of what creates them or harms us, codependency, addiction, escapism, numbing, all these different factors,
Mm-hmm.
all interconnected, really.
Yep.
This is overall a mental health conversation.
Yep.
People want to, maybe they're listening and they're like, you know what? It's time for me to face my wounded angels, my inner children. How should they go about doing that? Obviously, in a way that
Mm-hmm.
is not too triggering, but to some degree, it is going to be a confrontation, a communication.
Mm-hmm.
What's the best way you have found to do that? For you, obviously, you were writing and working at the same time. For them, is it through a creative practice? Is it through therapy? Is it solely internal reflection? What do you recommend?
Well, it's hard for me to recommend
Yeah, it's not one
like
size fits all.
specific
Yeah.
because yeah, I do. I mean, you can see how I did it in the book.
Hmm.
Well, part of how I did it. It wasn't all
Right.
inner child work. Some of it was 12-step based and some of
Hmm.
it was therapy. I had a
Right.
doctor. I'd been hospitalized.
Hmm.
I was hospitalized in Tokyo, so I
Yeah.
was hospitalized twice.
This isn't the whole
Um,
healing, but this is a major part of it.
it's a major part of it for me,
Yeah.
especially the codependent part.
Yeah.
But in general, I would say if you're in trouble,
Mm,
get help.
mm.
If you're kind of just taking a lighthearted look at, let me try out some inner child, but my life is okay, that's one thing. But if you're like circling the drain and thinking, if you're really struggling, get help. There's tons of help out there, so I would say that to start with, whether it's a psychiatrist or talk to a friend and see if they can recommend help. Again, I respect anonymity when it comes to 12 step, but that's an option you can check out for free.
Mm.
There's other support groups you can check out for free.
Right.
But the other thing is don't give up because I was hopeless, man. I was really,
Mm.
for 11 years, I mean, it was really pathetic and sad. And I had given up. I really thought, at some point I'll die, and I thought everything looked really dark. And I can't tell you how many amazing things have happened in the last 8 years. Like, not
Right.
only just the Indonesia thing with the drumming. It's like, I ruined my experience at Disney.
Mm.
I could have had such a great time
Yeah.
jamming. People were in a good mood. They're at Disneyland. I could have had such a great time, and if I could have found gratitude, but I was really unwell. When I got well, I thought, well, the music thing's behind me. That was ruined. I ruined that. I'll focus on the writing. And then
Mm.
somehow Indonesia happened. It was real synchronicity. I was traveling around. I just reached out to a couple of people by email. All of a sudden, the right people were talking to the right people, and they were flying
Right.
around the country to do drums. I never thought that could happen again. I thought I'd ruined it. So
Mm.
don't give up hope, especially if you had dreams before and you don't have any anymore. But yeah, sorry, it's not so specific on what to do. But
Yeah,
yeah,
no, but
get help, get
there's gonna
help
be
if you
opportunities.
if you need people.
100%.
Yeah.
We get tunnel vision. We
Hmm.
get so focused on short term in the present that we fail to think about the opportunities, or we get so
Hmm.
focused on the bad opportunities or what we think is going to happen that, like you're saying, there are great opportunities that we could never even predict. They just
Hmm.
come out of nowhere and they present themselves.
Yeah.
And it's waiting and hope for those things. Like you said, one of the things you were writing about is what do we qualify and count as a miracle? There are miracles every day in our
Right.
lives, and we look for something so big and cinematic that we miss all the small miracles. So
Oh yeah.
I think that's really important. We started this episode with reference to Slaughterhouse-Five. We're ending it with Sauna House 5
Oh
because
God, yeah.
you can't see it on the
It,
screen, surprisingly,
it
thank
is hot as
goodness,
hell in here.
but we're covered with sweat and you
Mhm.
can't see it on the screen. So thank you, Zoom. Shout out, not a sponsor.
Yeah.
But give me 1 year free premium and I'll promote. But edit with Sauna House 5 is hot in here. But important conversation. Like I said, everything we talked about, lots of different topics, all interrelated. And I hope this resonated with someone. Obviously, they can find out more in your book. We have your website, which has everything,
It
as you
does. Yeah,
mentioned.
it does.
So, whether they want to check out your sci fi, whether they want to check out Wounded Angels, or
Hmm.
stay on alert for your new stuff coming
The
out,
new
that's
stuff.
exciting.
The new stuff
And
will be up there soon on the. It's called the sci-fi is called The Vibrance,
okay.
Vibrants, and it's about the
Mm,
future of
mm,
creativity.
okay. And then you have, quote, Wounded Angels 2,
That's
for lack of better word,
Inner Child Unleashed.
Inner Child
I'm
Unleashed.
pretty sure that's the title.
Okay.
It is a
Is it
follow-up, but it's
pending?
not.
A pending title or
I think I like it. I was going back and forth, but I think I
okay?
like Inner Child Unleashed.
Just we'll just keep our eyes open for that.
Yeah,
And yeah, thank you so much for your time today, for again meeting me in
it's been
person to do
amazing. Thank you
this,
so much.
and lots of great stuff. I'm glad you're here, and everyone listening, just keep up that hope, keep healing. We mentioned earlier, hurt people, but healed
Mhm.
people heal people. We
Yeah,
have a choice of what we do with what we've been through, and it's up to us
definitely.
to cultivate those life lessons. So thank you everyone for listening.